Chapter 188. Madame Ruan couldn't help but frown. She knew that her daughter's current state was not right. As her daughter, it was destined that she would not be like the other girls who stayed in the boudoir. If she could surpass her master, that would be something to be happy about. However, this was her only child. In the end, she could not bear to do that. What she taught her was more about the survival skills of the inner residents. Once, she thought that there was no problem with the upbringing she had given her. However, a series of unexpected events had shattered her perception. She was glad that her daughter didn't break down and go crazy because of the heavy blow, but she also felt sorry for her body and mind. She hadn't gone through the first ordeal, and the latter followed closely behind. Her endurance was obviously in the middle stage. If she went crazy, then she wouldn't know anything or she wouldn't take it seriously at all. Naturally, she wouldn't suffer. Now, she was either going backward or forward in the ordeal. As a mother, she naturally hoped for the latter. In fact, she didn't disappoint her. However, the problem now was because the process was too short. It was simply pulling the seedlings to help them grow. Crazy, cold, not recognizing her own family. Follow her and prosper. She would be a devil through and through. There were already signs of this before, but at this moment it was taking shape. Madame Ruan restrained her gaze. Could it be that something happened just now that she didn't know? With a smile on her face, Ruan Fengfei turned over the 6 heads one by one to take a closer look. She even asked her mother with great interest how those wounds were formed. They were made after death. Wouldn't it be more interesting to cut them when they were alive? Her hands were full of dirt, but she didn't care at all. She didn't have the delicate appearance that she used to have when she was stained with dirt. After looking, she lost interest and used a handkerchief to wipe her hands. Little by little, she wiped very seriously and attentively. Clearly, some of the dirt couldn't be wiped off, but she still wiped it again and again. Mother, these people, were you the one who left them to slaughter the village? They failed to kill and were killed instead. They were really useless. However, this is also good. That village can be left to play with slowly. Mother, if there's anything you can't do, you can tell me. Can help you. Madame Ruan quietly looked at her daughter. In fact, she had some faint regrets in her heart. If she had known that this day would come, she would have trained her in the best direction from the very beginning. Now that it was like this, it was too late to change. Everything else was fine, but loyalty was a big problem. Because she would only put herself first, everything else would have to be put behind. However, there was a wrong move. If she used it properly, she would become a sharp weapon if she didn't know the most crucial part. Madame Ruan reached out and touched her face. Why are you covering your face at home and using such a thick cloth? Aren't you stuffy? Ruan Fengfei's eyes were brimming with smiles. Then mother, help me take it down. Madame Ruan nodded and casually took it off. Then she was stunned. This. The face that was almost healed and the scar that was gradually fading had now turned into a black line. It was like a sinister and ugly worm. There were fine lines like a spider web on the edge. This was the final push. Fengfei, what's going on? You're asking me. How would I know? What I eat and wear, including the medicine used on my face, are all not under my control. There was a trace of innocence in her eyes that were no longer clear. Madame Ruan's face was very ugly. She was completely unaware that someone had taken advantage of her. If it wasn't so obvious, she was afraid that she would still be in the dark. But the problem was, when did this happen? Could it be that there was a loophole that she didn't know about in the backyard of the Ruan family that she controlled? Her own details might have been known by others, so it was reasonable for there to be a loophole. But this was unbearable. She took a deep breath. Fengfei, it's mother's negligence. Don't worry, mother will think of a way for you. No need, mother. I don't think there's anything wrong with this. Ruan Fengfei said with a smile. But when she no longer cared, she could be indestructible. Right, mother, prepare a man who is proficient in bedroom matters for me. Madame Ruan slightly narrowed her eyes. She had really changed completely. Even if you didn't ask, I would have prepared one for you. This way I won't have to waste my breath. But wait until your body recovers. Although her private parts weren't particularly injured, it wasn't suitable for her to have sex in a short period of time. Send it over tonight. There has to be a process of adaptation. Madame Ruan was silent for a moment. She restrained all her emotions. Okay. She was straightforward. Ruan Fengfei smiled. From now on, this woman in front of her would probably no longer treat her as a daughter. Speaking of which, it was funny. She herself was dirty, but she wanted a clean daughter. Did she want to preserve the last bit of beauty, or was she deceiving herself? No matter which one it was exceptionally stupid. Daughter will go back first. Madame Ruan watched her step over the threshold, turn around and leave. She then looked back at the wooden box. People like them really shouldn't have extravagant demands. The final result was the same. She closed the wooden box expressionlessly. Ruan Fengfei's thoughts were right. She would no longer treat her as a daughter. Worldly possessions would still be the same as before. Emotionally, she would no longer be moved by her. She had completely abandoned her. Therefore, Madame Ruan's so-called feelings were quite ridiculous. Feelings that could be easily abandoned, were they called feelings? Perhaps she couldn't completely deny her efforts, but perhaps she had already imagined a situation like today. In fact, she had always had reservations in her heart. Since she didn't wholeheartedly in the past, she naturally wouldn't feel unbearable pain when she gave it up. Ruan Ruizhong went to find Lu Qingdi. His original intention was to ask for an imperial edict to search everywhere. Obviously, Lu Qingdi wouldn't agree to such a request. After all, the people accompanying him were all favored ministers, important ministers, and the largest group of the royal family. Could these people's residences be searched casually? Moreover, his son was basically in the summer palace. It was absolutely impossible to let a minister, even a trusted minister, touch his head. In Lu Qingdi's view, it was only a minister who was targeted, not him. Moreover, the one who died was just an insignificant servant. There was no reason for him to mobilize so many people. Besides, other people were fine, but your family was in trouble. Wouldn't it make people suspect that there was something fishy about your family? For the sake of your loyalty, it was good enough that they didn't investigate you. Therefore, Lu Qingdi asked Yu Zhongqing to take some people to help him search other places. In fact, this was equivalent to not helping at all. Fortunately, Lu Qingdi didn't go to the extreme. He told Ruan Ruizhong that if he had evidence and knew who was behind the scenes, he could issue an imperial edict to search. After leaving Lu Qingdi's sight, Ruan Ruizhong's face became colder. It wasn't that he didn't feel that Lu Qingdi was gradually becoming colder towards him. The emperor was ruthless. There were many emperors who killed meritorious ministers. He was just a grand secretary and really didn't count for much. His Ruan family was at its most difficult time. Because of those rumors and slanders, he was also impeached. Although Lu Qingdi didn't say anything, it didn't mean that Lu Qingdi didn't have any objections. After all, it also damaged Jin Qinhuang's face. As for himself, although he wanted to be the same as before, he had to admit that his body was not as good as before. It seemed that he was somewhat powerless. However, these couldn't be revealed. Otherwise, the Ruan family would really be finished. Yu Zhongqing stood behind him. He was very clear about who was behind this matter, and had long speculated that there was a problem with the Ruan family. What he was more puzzled about was whether the problem was with this Grand Secretary or other people in the Ruan family. However, he didn't need to ask about these. Since he acted as if he didn't know from the beginning, then he would keep it that way. In the end, Ruan Ruizhong didn't let Yu Zhongqing bring people to search with great fanfare. It was completely useless. There was no need to let everyone know and increase the gossip. Therefore, Yu Zhongqing brought people, as if they were patrolling. They walked around the courtyard area and then returned to report to Lu Qingdi. The Ruan family's summer palace was not as good as the Ruan family's inner residence in the capital. If Li Hongyuan wanted to deal with some people, he had already made arrangements. However, Madame Ruan had lost so many people. Moreover, they had only been here for less than a day. It was not enough to investigate the people who had been in the courtyard for a long time. Even if they were investigated, they would not be able to find any flaws in a short time. After all, these people's roots were not here. To get to the bottom of things was not something that could be done in a day. Moreover, they themselves did rough work. If they were sent away, there would be no replacement in this place. The best way was to strengthen the rules and let them perform their duties. Otherwise, if they came into contact with things that they should not come into contact with, then it would not matter even if they were spies. Therefore, what Madame Ruan really wanted to investigate was the entourage from the capital. Old Madame Ruan had always been a smart person. Smart people naturally had their weaknesses. If they didn't come into contact with things that they shouldn't come into contact with, it didn't mean that they couldn't get useful things. Nails didn't need to be very smart. Maybe they just needed to remember what they saw. In terms of manpower, old Madame Ruan was simply dregs compared to Li Hongyuan. There was no comparison at all. No matter how strict her defense was, there were still times when she could take advantage of a loophole. When he knew that she was doing a big investigation, Li Hongyuan didn't have any reaction. He just let people create something that was right but actually wrong. It was guaranteed that old Madame Ruan would completely block the loophole. At least she would think so. In the evening, Li Hongyuan learned that old Madame Ruan had added a maid for her baby daughter. It was said that she was tall with long legs and a slender waist. She was a perfect beauty. The beauty held a lamp at night and walked leisurely. Not many people saw her. Li Hongyuan sneered. Playing this kind of trick to deceive others was fine. However, he seemed to have underestimated Ruan Fengfei. After being passively torn apart, she might as well be corrupted to the end. Even if he knew that she was a person with a strong will and wouldn't be defeated easily, what would it be like if she climbed back up again and again only to be stepped on again and again? She would live a life of grievance and humiliation, never being able to achieve the goal of her tone. However, it was late at night and he missed 1-1. Digression. I will be adding more chapters today. https://www.bicon.com/11/11807/6653195. HTML chapter error. Click here to report. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book. www.bicon.com mobile version reading website. Bicon. Chapter 189. Since she wanted to, he would go and have a look. This was not the first time he had attacked her at night. However, he intended to let her know of his existence tonight. Anyway, she was already his woman. Why should she hide? Someone was so self-righteous and shameless. He had never thought that as long as they were not married, everything would change. This kind of intimacy had crossed the bottom line and was absolutely not allowed. It had a great impact on a girl's family. If outsiders knew about it, it was equivalent to losing one's virginity before marriage. For example, if the person who was intimate with Jingwan, no, it should be said that he was her former two fiancés, even if he had nothing to do with Jingwan, he would definitely feel that it was inappropriate for him to be intimate with her. Given how much he cared about Jingwan, he would definitely explode and want to kill her. However, if this person was himself, his fiancée was equal to his wife. This was such a serious double standard. It was not the first time that he went to the Luo family, no, to the place where the third daughter of the Luo family lived in the middle of the night. It was a walk in the park for him. He was quite skilled in this business. He took the wind and climbed over the wall. Because Li Hongyuan didn't deliberately walk lightly, and every night, Bai Xiao and Hei Mei took turns to keep watch at night, not to mention the conscientious Nanny Gong. She would check the room at least once every night. Therefore, when he just approached, he had already been discovered. Seeing that Nanny Gong was silent, Bai Xiao also kept silent. Nanny Gong lit a small lamp. The light was dim and hazy. Because of a certain someone's frequent night raids, Nanny Gong firmly put an end to her young lady's habit of sleeping without clothes. She didn't want her young lady to be completely naked the moment he appeared, without even doing anything. Even so, on a hot day, Jingwan was only wearing a close-fitting doo-doo and underwear. She lay on her side with her face facing the inside. Only a thin silk blanket covered her waist. Therefore, her arms, back and feet were all exposed. Even if he did not see her naked, the effect was almost the same. Someone's eyes became deeper and deeper. Li Hongyuan sat on the edge of the bed and reached out to hold Jingwan's leg. The soft and smooth feeling. Jingwan subconsciously kicked her foot, then immediately woke up. She woke up very quickly, and when she saw who was sitting by the bed, she suddenly sat up. She took the opportunity to withdraw her foot from his palm, and pulled the silk blanket around her waist to wrap it around her body. "Your Highness, why are you here?" She didn't dare to believe it. She knew you didn't follow the rules, but breaking into a lady's room at night. Li Hongyuan reached out and grabbed Jingwan's foot again, preventing her from retreating. A lazy and charming smile appeared on his face. "Because I miss you so much that I can't sleep at night, so I came here." He spoke the truth without any ambiguity. Jingwan rolled her eyes at him. After the initial shock, she thought about this fellow's style. It didn't seem strange that he would do such a thing. She regained her composure and withdrew her foot. After confirming that the other party wouldn't let go, she let him hold her foot. As he approached Jingwan's bottom line, Jingwan naturally retreated bit by bit. She hadn't touched his bottom line yet, so she didn't know how much he would indulge her. However, it was obvious that when facing Li Hongyuan, she was much more relaxed than before, and didn't follow the etiquette. "You don't believe me." Li Hongyuan smiled and gently rubbed his finger on her foot. "Don't touch, it tickles." "I believe you, why wouldn't I believe you? You are a prince, so your words naturally carry weight." Jingwan said perfunctorily. They just saw each other during the day, and he missed her so much that he couldn't sleep. Who was he trying to fool? She was sleeping soundly, but was suddenly woken up. Even if Jingwan didn't have a morning temper, she was still in a bad mood. "Now that your Highness has seen her, you should go back and rest." Li Hongyuan looked at her with a smile. His eyes were like small hooks, and his hand moved up her foot, caressing her calf back and forth. "Jiao Jiao, is this your first time touching this prince?" The greasy way of addressing her couldn't be any more obvious, and the way his hand moved, "This bastard. Do you need this subject to help your Highness undress?" Knowing that he wouldn't leave like this, Jingwan was too lazy to waste her breath. "Is Jiao Jiao inviting this prince?" The tip of his tongue brushed across his lips. Jingwan slightly tilted her face and covered her eyes with her hand. "Bastard, using his beauty to trick her again. If your Highness wants to rest like this, no one will have any objections. Actually, this prince doesn't have a problem either. I'm just worried that someone will feel unfair and take off my clothes later." His teasing tone and teasing expression made Jingwan want to slap him. He shouldn't have touched her sore spot. Jingwan was a little embarrassed, so she pulled the silk blanket and lay back down. "Your Highness, please don't disturb my rest." "Thank you very much." Looking at her tightly wrapped back, Li Hongyuan laughed silently. He quickly took off his clothes, leaving only a pair of underwear. "Bastard, I told you not to disturb my rest." Hearing the flirtatious sounds, Mama Gong looked at the blushing Bai Xiao. "You should rest. I'll keep watch here." "Yes, Mama." Bai Xiao crouched down and quickly left. Mama Gong sighed. She thought that it would take a long time, but it didn't take long for it to stop. A hungry wolf that had tasted a bit of meat was actually able to resist the temptation. It was truly unusual. Seeing that Li Hongyuan, who had kissed her fiercely, didn't do anything else, Jingwan was a little puzzled. Seeing her puzzled expression, Li Hongyuan was a little angry and amused. He reached out and pinched her nose. "Do you want it that much?" He straightened his back. Jingwon couldn't help but shrink back from the hot temperature. She quickly shook her head. If you don't want it, then behave. Although I said that the most precious thing should be saved for the wedding night, I can't guarantee that I'll do it. Sometimes a man's rationality depends on his lower body. Lee Hongyuan's smile was a little evil. I'm worried that I won't be able to control myself. So Jiao Jiao, don't seduce me. Otherwise you'll have to bear the consequences. Jingwon reached out and slapped him across the face. Who was seducing who? All right, stop fooling around. Lee Hongyuan grabbed her hand and put it on his waist. He reached out and pulled her into his arms. There was a layer between them. He simply pulled the string of the doo-doo and threw it off the bed. Then he continued to move downwards. Wang Ye, you clearly said, don't talk. Lee Hongyuan interrupted her. He removed the last barrier between them. Then he hugged Jingwon and rubbed against her. He let out a satisfied sigh. When he couldn't do anything, Lee Hongyuan found that he really liked the feeling of skin against skin. It was an indescribably wonderful feeling. Lee Hongyuan liked it, but Jingwon might not like it. First, it was summer. Sticking to a person was like a stove. Second, this bastard was too tight. It was like being entangled by a python. It was uncomfortable. Jiao Jiao, I said, don't seduce me. Lee Hongyuan tightened his grip. Wang Ye, it's too tight. It's uncomfortable. Let go. She didn't expect him to let go. She could only ask for the next best thing. Let go if you call me husband. Lee Hongyuan's chin rubbed against the top of her head. His eyes were closed. Shameless. Ayuan, it's really uncomfortable. Can you let go? Jingwon softened her tone. Lee Hongyuan laughed silently in a place where she couldn't see. He finally showed mercy and lay down on his back. He let her head rest on his shoulder and put her hand on his chest. His other hand pulled one of her legs over and put it on his lap. Her soft thigh just happened to touch an unspeakable place. Jingwon was about to move away when he patted her warningly. He felt that Jingwon was finally obedient. A certain someone was satisfied with everything except for the part that he couldn't be satisfied with before marriage. He felt Jingwon's breathing. What's wrong? Can't sleep. I'm not used to it. Jingwon spoke the truth. So Wang Ye, can you leave my bed? You have to get used to it early. Jiao Jiao has to learn to adapt to my existence. Whether she was used to it or not, who knew better than him? Right now, it was just because she was awake that she wasn't used to it. Her body wasn't like that. The best example was that if she fell asleep, she wouldn't wake up just because he moved. That's after marriage. It was already early enough to be buried in the grave of marriage. In the end, he still wanted to deprive her of her freedom. After marriage, there are more important things. Jingwon chose to shut up. I can't sleep for a while. Talk to me. Talk about what? Jingwon's eyes were half closed. In fact, she was quite sleepy at this moment. She was trying to get sleepy. Who knows, she might fall asleep in a while. You talk, I'll listen. If I fall asleep, don't wake me up. A certain someone's voice was pleasant to listen to. Although it didn't become sexy because of the heavy desire, it was close to her ear. It was low and slightly numb. Perhaps it would have a very good hypnotic effect. Then Lee Hongyuan softly said some interesting things. Jingwon stifled a laugh from time to time. She thought to herself that she really couldn't tell that a certain someone was actually hiding a sense of humor. However, Jingwon's brain gradually emptied. She became more and more sleepy. She became drowsy and her breathing became more and more long. One. Jingwon unconsciously responded. Just live your life happily. Don't worry about anything else. Leave everything to me, okay? Okay. Jingwon responded. Lee Hongyuan kissed her forehead. He knew that she most likely didn't hear what he said clearly. She only said, good, because he emphasized the last 3 words. She was like a child who only knew how to talk and didn't know how to think. Everything came out of her mouth. However, he took it that she agreed to everything. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6653197. HTML. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book. www.bicken.com mobile version reading website. Bicken. Chapter 190. Because there was no sound in the room, Nanny Gong entered the room and didn't put down the bed curtain. She saw the two naked people sleeping in each other's arms. She felt numb now. Because she couldn't stop it, she could only think in a positive way. But in the current situation, it seemed that she couldn't find anything good for her young lady. She was taken advantage of, and it might even damage her reputation. All the good things were taken by a shameless bastard. Well, Nanny Gong knew that he didn't sleep well, but he seemed to sleep well with his young lady in his arms. After all, she watched him grow up and he was the only son of the imperial noble consort. It was impossible for Nanny Gong not to feel sorry for him at all. So, she could only think in this way to comfort herself. Nanny Gong went forward and picked up the clothes that were thrown on the ground and put them aside. She also picked up the silk blanket that had fallen under the bed. She looked straight ahead and was about to cover them when she suddenly met Li Hongyuan's dark eyes. She paused and continued what she was doing. She put the silk blanket on them. It wasn't very tight, just from their chests to their thighs. On such a hot day, there was an ice basin in the room, but it was only to prevent their stomachs from catching a cold. Li Hongyuan took the opportunity to pull the silk blanket on Jingwan's shoulder. He tilted his head, put his cheek on her forehead and closed his eyes. Except for himself, probably no one could be sure if he had fallen asleep just now. With his eyes closed, Li Hongyuan appeared to be much more harmless. In Granny Gong's eyes, the two of them were a young couple who slept with their necks intertwined. However, from the way they slept, she could tell that they were very loving. At least he loved her very much. For ordinary couples, even if they slept on the same bed, they would sleep separately and each of them would occupy half of the bed. It was as if there was a boundary between them, not to mention those couples who still slept separately after the ceremony. Could they be called husband and wife? It would be better if they stayed like this for the rest of their lives. Nanny Gong took the lamp and turned to leave. Li Hongyuan blatantly stayed the night, so he naturally wouldn't leave early like before. Therefore, Jingwan woke up around the same time because of her biological clock. The honey-colored chest in front of her eyes and the warm and elastic touch under her palm made her a little dazed. Then she sat up. It was the first time she was hugged to sleep by a man, but she had a good night's sleep as usual. This was completely illogical. She had slept alone for a long time, and the only time she slept with cousin Chow Chow, she couldn't sleep well and even moved to another place. She was hugged to sleep by a man, but she was used to it. With such a big movement, there was no reason for Li Hongyuan not to wake up. He half opened his eyes and used the weak light to look at Jingwan's vexed and depressed expression. The silk blanket slid down to her waist, and the view in front of her chest was very good. But she didn't realize it. Her expression became dark, and the grumpiness she had when she woke up had long flown away. Whether it was because of the morning or some other reason, a certain part of her body began to stir again. He reached out and pressed a certain attractive soft part and rubbed it gently. Only then did Jingwan come back to her senses. She grabbed the mischievous hand and flung it away. Li Hongyuan reached out and grabbed Jingwan's waist. He lifted his long leg and pressed Jingwan back. She let out a short and hurried scream, but before she could finish her sentence, it was completely sealed. Jingwan was so angry that she was scared of his shoulder. She slapped his shoulder, but she didn't restrain her strength at all. A certain someone didn't care and didn't even stop her. He focused on enjoying the morning dessert. Jingwan slapped him a few more times, but her strength gradually weakened. It was because her body was too young and inexperienced. In this aspect, Li Hongyuan was her master, so her resistance was infinitely close to zero. She couldn't withstand his teasing at all. Instead of hitting him, she turned into hugging his shoulder and back and catered to his kisses. There was a tendency for things to go awry. Knock, knock, knock. There were 3 moderate knocks on the door. "Miss, are you awake?" When Mama Gong saw the maidservant standing at the door with a cup of water, blushing and not daring to enter, she knew what was going on inside. It should be known that it was already early in the morning. It was really improper for them to be fooling around in a girl's boudoir in the Luo family. Even after marriage, no one would fool around in a girl's boudoir before marriage. Not to mention they were still engaged. They had already endured it at night. Now, if it was discovered by others and spread to the ears of master and madam, it would be terrible. The maidservants were apprehensive, but she didn't. She directly knocked on the door. Suddenly awakened, Jingwan reached out to push him, but she couldn't move him at all. "Prince." Her expression was a little bad because a certain someone was in heat early in the morning, and also because she was disappointing. Li Hongyuan's face was a little angry, but he quickly restrained himself. He buried his face in Jingwan's neck, unwilling to let go. Jingwan was so angry that she scratched him. There were a few obvious bloodstains on his shoulder and back, but a certain someone didn't seem to feel pain and didn't even make a sound. It was difficult for this kind of person to restrain himself from offending his superior. Jingwan's anger grew. She opened her mouth and fiercely bit him. Although it was a fierce bite, it was really a merciless one. She even tasted blood. Li Hongyuan finally moved. He reached out to touch her head. "Good darling, let go. If you continue to bite, I won't be able to hold back." He hinted at her by straightening his back. Jingwan's face was as black as the bottom of a pot. Was this guy a masochist? He was bitten like this, but he was still excited. "Miss." The urging voice sounded again. "Prince, move." Jingwan's voice was a little cold this time, without any intention of discussion. Li Hongyuan raised his head. "Zhe, your temper is getting worse and worse." Jingwan sneered. "Who are you blaming?" "Me." Li Hongyuan admitted it like a hoodlum. On one hand, he indulged her without any bottom line. On the other hand, he was viciously angering her. It was time for a clay figurine's temper to come out. However, a certain person felt quite accomplished. "Why aren't you moving?" Li Hongyuan was quite obedient this time. He hugged her and turned around, placing her outside. Jingwan quickly got up and wrapped herself in a silk blanket. Just as she was about to call him in, she suddenly paused and turned around. His body was in the golden ratio. His muscles were perfect and not bulky. His lines were smooth and beautiful. He also had a face that was off the charts. Lying on his side with one hand supporting his head, he really was not an ordinary seductive person. Jingwan pulled off the silk blanket and covered him from head to toe. "Who are you showing off to?" "My maidservant is about to get married." Her hand that was about to lift the silk blanket paused. Why did these words sound a little sour? She smiled silently. Her movements were a little smaller, only exposing her head. "Fine, I'll only show it to you, my darling." He was covered, but she was not. It was convenient for a certain someone to see her from head to toe, although the light was too weak to see clearly. In Jingwan's opinion, this feeling was 100 times more shameful than having skin to skin. She subconsciously crossed her arms over her chest. Li Hongyuan laughed sullenly. "Is there anything on your body that I haven't seen before?" Jingwan was so angry that she simply smashed the pot. "I'm getting up. Mama, come in." In any case, the people around her had already seen her from head to toe countless times. Thinking about it, she had been served since she was young. It would be strange if she still felt ashamed in front of the people around her. However, after doing something even more shameful, Jingwan could not remain calm even if she tried to pretend to be calm. When she saw Mama Gong come in with a lamp, her eyes were a little shifty and she did not dare to look at her. Mama Gong lit up the other lights in the room. Jingwan seemed to suddenly wake up and hurriedly grabbed a piece of clothing. After wrapping it around her body, she realized that it was a certain prince's clothing. Her clothes were taken away to be washed after she changed out of them last night. Now, she could only see the doo-doo and underwear that a certain someone had taken off. Mama Gong acted as if she did not know anything. She glanced at Li Hongyuan, who was on the bed, and said, "Bring the water in." If it was not for this person, they would not have come in first. The maidservants filed in. After confirming Li Hongyuan's position, they squatted down as a form of greeting and no longer looked up. However, in the end he was a big man and his presence was too strong. However, no matter what they thought, this was the master's business. It was not their turn to interfere. They only needed to control their eyes and not look around. They also needed to control their mouths and not talk nonsense. Jingwan went to the bathroom in the back and quickly changed her clothes. Only then did the awkwardness lessen. After coming out, she quickly freshened up and looked at Li Hongyuan, who was obediently covered with a silk blanket. "Your Highness, do you want me to help you get up?" It would be best if he did not. How could Li Hongyuan not see Jingwan's insincerity? "I'll have to trouble you, Jingwan." After fetching water again, the others left. Jingwan took his clothes and prepared to put them on him. However, a certain someone did not appreciate it and said that he wanted to wash up first. Jingwan wanted to throw the clothes directly at his face. However, when she saw that his shoulder was obviously bruised and swollen, and there was also blood, it seemed that she had bitten him too hard. In the end, she endured it. However, so what if he had a good body? Could he show off as he pleased just because he had a good body? Jingwan first brought him water to rinse his mouth, then wrung a handkerchief for him to wash his face. From beginning to end, a certain someone was sitting there with a golden knife. A certain part of his body was really irritating to the eyes. He did not take the handkerchief she handed to him and just slightly raised his head. When he did not take it, Jingwan also pretended that she did not understand his meaning and persistently stretched out her hand. This prince is still a little sleepy and wants to go back to sleep. Jingwan reached out and covered his face with a handkerchief, wiping his face carelessly. Jingwan is really not gentle at all. Jingwan's mouth twitched into a fake smile. This subject's daughter has never served anyone before. "Your Highness, please excuse me." Li Hongyuan looked very magnanimous and did not want to argue with her. "It's okay. Jingwan was born smart and quick-witted. She will probably learn after doing it a few times." Jingwan wanted to say that it was a skill she would learn after marriage. She did not want to learn it at all now. When she was putting on clothes, it was not very smooth. Since she was young, the people who served her were too conscientious. She basically never wore clothes herself. When she put on clothes for herself, she could not do it perfectly. Moreover, a certain someone was not very cooperative and kept moving his hands and feet. Even after half a day, he was still loose and looked particularly seductive. However, Jingwan was not in the mood to appreciate beauty. After this torment, she was already sweating all over before she even started her morning exercise. Fortunately, a certain someone knew his limits. When he saw that Jingwan was really going to be provoked, he took over and was very nimble. He was done properly in less than half a minute. "You have this kind of hand speed, but you insist on letting her this handicapped hand do it. Is there any meaning in it?" However, she was not someone who knew how to wear clothes herself. As a dignified Qin Wang, the people who served him should be more careful and meticulous. Not only was it surprising that she was so good at self-reliance, it was also very strange. Li Hongyuan put on his shoes and stood up. He reached out to pinch Jingwan's chin and smiled. "It doesn't matter if you don't know how to. In the future, this prince can also serve the princess consort." As he spoke, he leaned over and kissed the corner of her mouth. Jingwan directly rolled her eyes at him. "Your Highness should stay to serve others. This subject's daughter can't bear it." Li Hongyuan narrowed his eyes. Jingwan's words made him a little angry. He reached out to grab Jingwan's waist and pulled her into his arms. You are this prince's wife. If you can't bear it, then who else in this world can? Jingwen, the only person who can be on equal footing with this prince is you, understand? On equal footing. These 4 words made Jingwen more than a little surprised. In this secular world where imperial power was supreme and men were superior to women, even the wife of the first wife did not have the qualifications to be on equal footing with her husband. Otherwise, why would there be the saying that the husband was the sky? Even the empress, who was the mother of the world, had the same temperament. In Jingwen's opinion, a person like Li Hongyuan did not care about women at all. But he actually said such words. Jingwen even suspected that he had been seen through by someone. Wife. No matter what, many thanks to your highness. How could Li Hongyuan not understand Jingwen's meaning? She thought that he only respected his wife. It was the same for anyone who sat in this position. She never knew. It's not your wife, it's you. Only you can sit in this position. Do you understand? Only you, Luo Jingwen, the one and only, the most complete you. Jingwen was taken aback. Was what he meant by what she had understood? But was it possible? He had so many fiancés. At that time she had no interaction with him at all. But when she looked at Li Hongyuan, her heart couldn't help but beat faster. Sure enough, everyone liked to hear these words of love. Even she was no exception. Jingwen always said that she should guard her heart and not beat for any man. But she didn't know that if she could control her heart, then it wouldn't be called love. After a long while, Jingwen forced out a smile. Is that so? Many thanks to your highness for your love. She didn't know how stiff and forced her smile was. Li Hongyuan suddenly felt a little discouraged. This girl still didn't believe him. She just didn't understand. Sometimes he even had the impulse to tell her everything. But in the end he cooled down this idea. Wan had never been easily moved by sweet words. If he told her about those unknown feelings, she might think that he deliberately made it up. And even if she believed it, it had no direct connection to whether she was moved or not. Might even backfire. Not everyone could be used to others forcibly occupying their life. And Wan might even think that the person he liked was the person in her memory, and it had nothing to do with her. After all, she didn't know anything. Wan's nature was open-minded, but when it came to the relationship between a man and a woman, anyone could be stubborn. At that time, the only one who would be distressed would be herself. In any case, whether she knew about his past or not, he still had to take step by step to win her heart. He had to use practical actions to tell her that he loved her from the beginning to the end. Then, when the time was right, he would tell her everything about his past. Naturally, when the conditions were right, success would follow naturally, and Wan would be closer to his heart. When it came to Jingwen, he always remembered one thing. No matter how much he said, it was better to do it. Forget it. You'll know in the future. Li Hongyuan gently rubbed her neck and kissed her forehead. Jingwen felt his frustration and powerlessness, as if she had failed to live up to his feelings. If there was no relationship between them, Jingwen might not have done anything. But they were engaged, and soon they would become the closest people. One's glory, one's loss, so this made her feel a little helpless. She couldn't tell right now. Was he doting on her? As a substitute? Or a change of heart? Or was it true love? No matter how mature Jingwen's temperament was, no matter how rational she was, and no matter how much psychological preparation she did, it couldn't change the fact that she was a blank slate when it came to love. She was not good at dealing with this kind of thing. Li Hongyuan looked at her small appearance, and his mood improved a lot. This girl was actually soft-hearted. She was amenable to coaxing but not coercion. She valued friendship and righteousness. She would never accept other people's kindness for no reason. Once she accepted it, she would always try her best to return it. This was also good. Although her heart was a little heavy and difficult to conquer, it did not mean that it was impossible to conquer it. Because of their special relationship, he could force her to accept his kindness. Sooner or later, he would win her over. Don't think too much. Do what you should do. Just do what you want. Do what I want. In front of such beauty, Jingwon expressed that she wanted to pounce on him. Hence, she unceremoniously hooked her arms around Lee Hongyuan's neck and kissed him fiercely. Before Lee Hongyuan could turn the tables on her, she broke free from his grasp and ran away. Lee Hongyuan touched his lips. Won, are you comforting me? He suddenly smiled. Comforting? Course not. Jingwon expressed that she was just seduced by his beauty. That was all. After that, Granny Gong came in and handed Lee Hongyuan a cup of warm water. Miss said that drinking a cup of warm water after waking up every morning is good for your health. Lee Hongyuan raised his eyebrows. He took the cup and drank it in one gulp. After that, Granny Gong quickly helped him tie up his hair. Jingwon didn't know how to do such a difficult thing. After everything was done, Lee Hongyuan casually went out. However, Granny Gong, who stayed in the room to tidy up the bed, found some bloodstains. Her first reaction was to feel her heart sink. Could it be that miss? On second thought, it couldn't be. She didn't have any blood the last time they did it for so long. It didn't make sense for her to lose her virginity in such a short time last night. The bloodstains didn't look like any other traces. Since it wasn't her and there was no blood on her body, then it was most likely. She quickly tidied it up and didn't think too much about it. Jingwon was already doing morning exercises. Although he knew that if there was nothing going on, she wouldn't get up every day. But this was the first time Lee Hongyuan saw it with his own eyes. The time they spent alone in the previous life wasn't short. However, because of special circumstances, Wan's morning exercises were also something to kill people. Suddenly, there was a kind of peace and quiet. Lee Hongyuan sat at the side and watched. However, as he watched, his thoughts started to wander. With such a soft waist, sometimes, wouldn't he be able to do whatever he wanted? The last time they had intimate contact, except for the last step, they did everything. However, they were all very ordinary positions. Maybe he could try something else next time. Lee Hongyuan felt a little itchy on the tip of his tongue and unconsciously swept the inside of his teeth. The sky was about to turn white. Your Highness, you should go back, Granny Gong said. Lee Hongyuan looked sideways at her and then stared at Jingwon for a while. Finally, he stood up and walked towards Jingwon. Your Highness, are you leaving? You can't bear to part with me. Then after I have my meal, I'll go see your grandparents before I leave. Farewell, Your Highness. When dealing with a thick-skinned person, one couldn't hesitate at all. Even more so, one couldn't persuade him to stay. Her forehead was wet with sweat and her face was stiff. The words, "Get lost," were clearly written on her face. He reached out to touch her face and leaned closer. With a charming smile he said, "Sweetheart, wait for me tonight." In response to Lee Hongyuan, Jingwon's face was as stiff as a coffin. Lee Hongyuan was in a good mood. He held her face and kissed her without any disdain. "It's impolite not to reciprocate. This is a gift in return." Then he walked away. Bastard. Jingwon cursed in a low voice. She looked at the servant girls and saw that they all had their heads lowered. The only thing missing was a sign above their heads that said, "This servant didn't see." Granny Gong's back was as he left. Her sign probably said, "Out of sight, out of mind." His reputation, his image, they were all ruined by that bastard. Lee Hongyuan returned to the mansion. As a close attendant, Eunuch Mu had already prepared water for the bath. However, his master seemed to be coming back much later than expected. It was different from the previous times. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6653201. HTML. Please click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book. www.bicken.com. Bikugo mobile reading website. Bicken. Chapter 191. Because it was summer, the temperature of the bathwater was not high, but it cooled slowly. In addition, Li Hongyuan actually needed cold water to calm his mind at this time, so he soaked in the water for a relatively long time. When Li Hongyuan climbed out of the water and cleaned up, it was already 2 hours later. Breakfast was served. Li Hongyuan did not ask anyone to serve him food. He ate slowly while drinking wine. That's right, breakfast with wine was so crazy. However, according to the attitude of the people around him, this was definitely not the first time. However, looking at his appearance, he should be thinking about something. No one dared to disturb him. He was silent, as if he was invisible. If he could not move, he would resolutely not move a step. Li Hongyuan put down his chopsticks. It was already half an hour. Finally, he looked at the extra person who did not belong to him, as if he was doing charity. The other party was also quite perceptive. When he met Li Hongyuan's gaze, he immediately greeted him and then explained the purpose of his visit. To put it bluntly, it was that imperial concubine Su missed her son, but this son was disobedient and did not live in the palace. She had no choice but to send people out to look for him. It was also a heart of love for his son. He could not give face to his father, but he still had to give face to his mother. Li Hongyuan led the people into the palace. The summer palace was built on the side of the mountain. The higher it was, the cooler it was. Undoubtedly, Emperor Lu Cheng's bedroom and the main hall of the summer palace were located at the top of the mountain. In contrast, the more favored one was, the higher the position of the courtyard. Whether it was imperial concubine Su or Li Hongyuan, they were both on the second level. However, facing the main hall at the top of the mountain was a fast and long stone staircase. The staircase was on both sides, and in the middle were various forms of lifelike dragon reliefs. From the foot of the mountain to the top, this huge project was even more painstaking than the reliefs in the palace. However, although it was grand, it was difficult to climb up step by step. Out of 10 people, 8 of them would probably be panting with their hands on their knees. Fortunately, there was no crazy government decree that prohibited people from riding on palanquins or horses in order to show respect to the imperial power. Of course, this wasn't the only way up the mountain. Ordinary people weren't qualified to take this path. Li Hongyuan rode on his horse with an indifferent expression. If one looked closely, they would find that he was actually somewhat happy. Apart from the grand main road, the rest of the palace was also meticulously built. Every flower, every tree, every building, and every pavilion would leave one racking their brains. Take noble consort Su's courtyard for example. Although it wasn't as grand and luxurious as her palace in the imperial palace and occupied a much smaller area, it was still ingenious and had its own unique flavor. The most distinctive feature of the temporary imperial residence was the continuous rise and fall of mountains as far as the eye could see. It looked magnificent. However, not everyone had the fortune to see this kind of scenery. At the very least, one had to have enough status and dignity to be able to see it. When Li Hongyuan saw noble consort Su, Lu Chengdi, Prince Rui, and Princess Minxiang were all present. His parents and 2 biological children were present. This was probably a happy and harmonious family. Not to mention now, even if Li Hongyuan went back 10 years, he wouldn't feel anything about this scene. Of course, at that time, he would already be an old thing in a tender shell. If he was really 10 years old, he might feel sad, or perhaps he wouldn't feel anything. After all, noble consort Su treated him as her biological son and had never neglected him. However, that time was too long ago for him. How could he still remember such insignificant things? Before he got close, noble consort Su had already seen him and hurriedly waved at him. She was brimming with joy and the gentleness of a loving mother. It was as if with the appearance of this son, the 2 children that crawled out of her womb could be cast aside. Princess Minxiang, who was originally smiling happily, immediately froze. Among all the siblings, including the cousins, Princess Minxiang was the second most afraid of him. In fact, everyone knew that Li Hongyuan actually treated this younger sister quite well. At least, he had never done anything to her. Sometimes he would even give her some good things. However, Princess Minxiang was inexplicably afraid of him. "Mother, did you send someone to call sixth brother over?" Princess Minxiang's voice was trembling. "Yes, what's wrong?" Noble consort Su touched her hand. It was impossible for her not to notice her daughter's true feelings towards her son. After all, it wasn't just a day or two but several years. In fact, she had tried her best to avoid the two of them meeting. However, no matter how much she tried to avoid it, it was impossible for them to not meet forever. Because her son didn't do anything wrong, she couldn't even let Lu Qingdi know about this. Otherwise he might not like Minxiang. There aren't many chances to meet each other. You should take advantage of this opportunity to kiss each other properly. Princess Minxiang wanted to cry but had no tears. "Mother, What's wrong with Minxiang?" Lu Qingdi also turned to look at her. Her face was a bit pale and her expression wasn't right. "Not feeling well. If you don't feel well, call the imperial physician. However, weren't you fine just now?" Imperial consort Su gently squeezed her hand. Princess Min Xiang immediately smiled. "Many thanks for imperial father's concern. Daughter is fine. It's just that when I saw sixth brother, I suddenly thought of the dream I had last night. In the dream, sixth brother scared me. Since that's the case, then imperial father will teach him a lesson for you. Let him scare people even in his dream." "No way. Dreams are all fake. Sixth brother treats daughter the best. How can I teach sixth brother a lesson because of this?" Princess Minxiang pouted unhappily. Lu Qingdi laughed. "Your servant girl is just like your mother. You only know how to protect him." Although he said that, Lu Qingdi was happy from the bottom of his heart. That evil creature's temper was too bad. His siblings weren't close to him. As his father, he still hoped that he could have a pure blood relationship with him. Princess Minxiang also covered her mouth and smiled. Only noble consort Su, who was holding her hand, knew that her palm was already sweaty. Could Princess Minxiang clearly express her dislike for this sixth imperial brother? Course she could. She could stay far away from him just like the other siblings. However, if she did that, just as noble consort Su thought, her position in Lu Qingdi's heart would plummet. It was reasonable for others to distance themselves from Li Hongyuan, including her own brother, Li Hongming. However, she couldn't. She wasn't as favored as Li Hongyuan. When Li Hongyuan didn't do anything wrong, if she distanced herself from her brother, it would only make Lu Qingdi think that she was cold and cold-hearted. She would be disliked. Li Hongming naturally knew all of this. He wasn't like noble consort Su, who had deep feelings for Li Hongyuan. He had always been suspicious of Li Hongyuan. However, as the person involved, even Minxiang couldn't say anything. He could only suppress his suspicions in his heart. If he said it out loud, not only would it not affect Li Hongyuan, it might even cause him to suffer. It was true that Minxiang was his biological sister. However, a sister who didn't even have much value in a marriage alliance was just as a. Li Hongyuan walked in and paid his respects. He knew what the current atmosphere was, but he didn't care. It was enough to teach Minxiang a lesson once. When she was obedient, who would have the time to care about her? As for what would happen to her in the future, it was completely out of Li Hongyuan's consideration. Whether she lived or died, whether she was good or bad, it was all the same. Princess Minxiang stood up and greeted him. She very properly called him sixth brother, very intimately. Li Hongyuan smiled faintly. Minxiang is becoming more and more beautiful. Actually, Li Hongyuan didn't smile often. Who knew how many people would be stunned when they suddenly saw it? Just like right now, even his mother seemed to be mesmerized. However, after noble consort Su regained her senses, she subconsciously looked at Lu Qingdi. Even she could feel that this smile was similar to the one in her memory. How could he not know? Sure enough, Lu Qingdi stared at his son in a daze. No one would think that he was looking at his son. Li Hongming also saw it. His face turned green and he unconsciously clenched his fists. He actually had some impression of the imperial noble consort, but it wasn't deep. He seemed to think that she was a woman who was very beautiful when she smiled and seemed to have touched his head gently before. Other than that, there was nothing else. However, his mother said that old Sixth looked very similar to her, especially when they were young. It was as if they were carved out of the same mold. However, he was a man after all. As he grew older, when the characteristics of a man became more obvious, the degree of similarity would decrease. However, from his imperial father's expression, he knew that his imperial father would never forget her. It was said that a son's status depended on his mother. Even though his mother had firmly told him that his father would not give the throne to his sixth son, he was still very afraid in his heart. Leaving the throne to his favorite son. How many emperors had done this in history? Li Hongyuan didn't seem to notice their colorful expressions at all. Mother Min Xiang is of age now. Has her husband been chosen? Li Hongyuan's words pulled everyone back to reality. Imperial noble consort Su's expression froze for a moment. She seemed to have just realized what Li Hongyuan had said and smiled. Basically, it's already been chosen. It will probably be completely settled after we return from the summer vacation. The person that imperial mother has chosen must be the best. However, there's always a chance. No one can be sure of the future. Min Xiang, if he wronged you in the future, just tell sixth brother. Sixth brother will help you deal with him. Thank you, sixth brother. Princess Min Xiang said with a smile and a trace of shyness on her face. Lu Chengdi hid the disappointment on his face and snorted coldly. You evil creature. If you deal with him, how can he still be alive? You want your sister to become a widow, don't you? What is your majesty saying? You make it sound as if Yuan'er is cruel. Yuan'er's temper is a bit bad, but he has never taken someone's life easily. Min Xiang's future husband is his younger sister's husband. Yuan'er will definitely know when to stop. Yuan'er's heart is full of love for his sister. I can't let you distort it, Imperial noble consort Su said with a smile. Then Imperial father, just take it that Aken has nothing better to do and is meddling in other people's business. Speaking of which, Min Xiang still has her biological older brother. How can Aken have a turn? Li Hongyuan didn't care. He lifted his robe and sat down at the side. Evil creature. Lu Chengdi picked up the plate of pastries beside him and threw it over. Li Hongyuan tilted his head and the plate fell to the ground and shattered. The few pastries scattered everywhere. Saying such heart-wrenching words, your mother raised you for nothing. Li Hongyuan didn't even look at him. Lu Chengdi was so angry that he choked. On the other hand, Imperial noble consort Su covered her mouth and laughed. My beloved consort, you can still laugh after raising such an ingrate. If it were me, I would definitely want to beat him to death. Your Majesty, this concubine can't bear to do that. Besides, Yuan'er is trying to stop you, not this concubine. As his mother, how can this concubine not know what Yuan'er is thinking? This concubine regards him as her son, and Yuan'er naturally regards this concubine as his biological mother. It was you who said something first. And it's not the first day you know what kind of temper he has. And it's my fault. Lu Chengdi raised his eyebrows and glared. That's what your Majesty said. I didn't say anything. Imperial noble consort Su looked at him with a smile. Imperial noble consort Su had been by Lu Chengdi's side for 20 to 30 years and had always been favored. The reason was not one-sided. Because she had a good grasp of Lu Chengdi's emotions, she didn't have to worry about offending him when she occasionally joked or said something rebellious. On the contrary, it made Lu Chengdi experience something that he couldn't experience elsewhere, such as the warmth between an ordinary husband and wife. Who doesn't know that Min Xiang likes sixth brother the most? As her third brother, I sometimes get jealous. Besides, it's obvious that sixth brother likes Min Xiang. As brothers and sisters, we can't help but be envious. Sometimes I also want sixth brother to help her vent her anger. Unfortunately, I don't have that charm. Li Hongming interrupted with a smile. As an elder brother, You want your younger brother to help you vent your anger. How can you say that? Lu Chengdi scolded with a smile. Therefore, Lu Chengdi's face was like that of a child in June, changing constantly. Can't be helped. Sixth brother's fame is too great. It's not difficult for him to suppress everyone. Sometimes son's mouth is dry from talking. It's better to use sixth brother's name. Li Hongming seemed to be helpless. Lu Chengdi's smile faded a little. He picked up the teacup and took a sip. This evil creature is a hooligan. His reputation as a hooligan is well known. Why? Do you often meet another group of hooligans? Those who often dealt with hooligans could basically be classified as idle dandy. Li Hongyuan could, but Li Hongming dared to do so. He would definitely be severely punished. How could Li Hongming not know that he said something wrong? When he met Imperial Noble Consort Su's indifferent eyes, his heart trembled. How can that be? Son is just a little envious of sixth brother because he's too carefree. Naturally, I can't wait to drag him back to share Imperial Father's worries. Among the brothers, he's the most leisurely. Not to mention son, I reckon that even my younger brothers who are still in school want to beat him up. Lu Chengdi glanced at him. Let him do things. You're saying that you're going to spend all your time outside of work cleaning up his mess. Just take care of yourself. He'll be like this for the rest of his life. Perhaps Lu Chengdi's last sentence wasn't just for Li Hongming to hear. It wasn't the first time that Li Hongyuan heard Lu Chengdi say such specious words. It sounded like he expected better from him, but it was also a different kind of warning, telling him not to have any thoughts that he shouldn't have. Li Hongyuan never took it seriously. If he really counted on his father, he didn't need to mingle. It was better for him to tuck his tail between his legs early on. Li Hongyuan wasn't a person who was willing to be ordinary. Even in his previous life before he encountered an accident, he wasn't a person who followed the rules. To be honest, if it wasn't for Imperial Noble Consort Su, he probably would have fought with his other brothers to the death from the beginning. It could only be said that Imperial Noble Consort Su was too successful as a person and as a mother. Leaving these aside, they talked about some other interesting things. Li Hongyuan leaned lazily on the side, listless, as if he hadn't woken up yet. Imperial Noble Consort Su looked at him with a smile. What did Yuan do last night? What did he do? Meet a beauty in private. What else could he do? He was telling the truth. You're never serious. When Li Hongyuan went out, although it was always Eunuch Mu who took care of the trivial matters, it wasn't the case in other people's eyes. He also had 4 beautiful maids by his side. He used a side courtyard in the capital to raise beauties, and none of his maids had a status in his harem. However, no one believed that his maids were still virgins. However, because those 4 rarely showed up, it didn't arouse anyone's suspicion. He didn't bring anyone else with him on this trip. These 4 were by his side, meeting beauties at night. Who else could it be other than them? As the saying goes, food and sex are part of human nature. How is it not serious? Li Hongyuan's sitting posture became even more limp, as if his bones had been pulled out. Okay. Whatever you say. Imperial Noble Consort Su said and gestured to an auntie beside her. That auntie squatted and left. Soon she came back, followed by a line of beauties. These are the palace maids sent to the temporary imperial residence by the subordinates. You can pick 2 and take them back. Before the emperor went to the temporary imperial residence, he had arranged for beauties to be sent to the temporary imperial residence. This was something he was accustomed to, just like how he would select women from all over the country to fill his harem every year. As for these women, most of them were daughters of officials from all over the country. It was just that their fathers were all minor officials. The purpose of those people was nothing more than to climb up the social ladder. The people above them naturally wanted to climb to a higher position. The biggest characteristic of these women was their beauty. If these women were favored and doted on, it would bring great benefits to those people. If it was just a small official whose daughter flew up to a branch and became a phoenix, then it would be like a man ascending to the Tao and his chickens and dogs ascending to the heavens. Even the group of people who sent her up would benefit. Perhaps they would be able to secretly dream of things that they shouldn't dream of. However, it wasn't as if there weren't any beautiful dreams that came true in history. Speaking of these women, the ones who disliked them the most were probably the young imperial concubines who accompanied them. To them, traveling with the emperor was a rare opportunity. Compared to when they were in the palace, there were much fewer people fighting over them. If they served the emperor more often, they might be able to conceive a son. Now that they were pregnant, of course, they didn't expect them to fight for anything. They just wanted to have someone to rely on. In the future, when the emperor passed away, their son would be conferred the title of prince. When that time came, they would follow their son out of the palace and become an imperial concubine. For those who had served the emperor before, it was probably the best way out. Otherwise, when the time came, they would become nuns, or even worse, directly be buried with the emperor. However, they never expected that there would be a group of little vixens waiting in the temporary imperial residence. When they found out about this situation, they didn't know how many handkerchiefs they had torn, but in the end they were helpless. Didn't they see that the imperial concubine with the highest rank had a calm face and didn't say a word? Thus, it wasn't their turn to speak. Imperial concubine Su was even in a good mood to summon these women. They all thought that she wanted to make the first move to gain the upper hand and choose them to strengthen her favor. Now they finally knew her intention. It turned out that she chose them for her son. Looking at Lu Chengdi's indifferent expression, perhaps he had known about it long ago, or perhaps he wasn't so passionate about beauties now, so he was like this. There were a total of 8 women. Some were dressed elegantly, some were beautiful, some were gentle, and some were playful. In short, each had their own merits. Li Hongyuan looked at them indifferently. They probably already knew who the master was. Each of them secretly glanced at him. After meeting his gaze, they quickly lowered their heads and blushed. Even if they were familiar with Li Hongyuan's virtue, many people still fell for him, not to mention these people who didn't know at all. Such a handsome man seemed to be favored. Wouldn't it be better to follow such a person than to follow the emperor? Although the emperor didn't look too old, he couldn't be compared to his son's strong body. In short, these 8 women were completely bewitched by Li Hongyuan without understanding the situation. They forgot their original purpose and the expectations of the people who sent them in. As a result, there were 2 or 3 bold women. Some were shy, some were natural and unrestrained, and some were smiling sweetly. They looked at Li Hongyuan, intentionally or unintentionally, in an attempt to attract his attention. Li Hongyuan's eyes wandered around. Imperial mother, leave it to the other brothers. This son is not interested. As soon as these words came out, the 8 beautiful women all showed disappointed expressions. There was even one who moved her feet, as if she wanted to directly recommend herself to be his pillow. Fortunately, she restrained herself. Imperial concubine Su saw that his expression didn't change and he really looked disinterested. She raised her eyebrows. Is Yuan feeling unwell? The others followed and looked over. Imperial mother, why do you say that? Imperial concubine Su smiled faintly, unusually graceful and dignified. It's just that there has been no one by Yuan's side for a long time. Li Hongyuan restrained some of his laziness and looked at Imperial concubine Su with some surprise in his eyes. Imperial mother is thinking too much. Imperial concubine Su coughed lightly. In fact, she was also a little embarrassed. It's good that you're fine. Li Hongyuan nodded. Of course I'm fine. This son just feels annoyed and doesn't want to raise people to play with for the time being. It's not to the point where there is no one to serve me. In that case, just casually pick 2 to serve me tea. As servant girls, they didn't need to be pampered. If they liked them, they could look at them a few more times. If they didn't like them, they could be thrown aside. Occasionally, they could be used to relieve boredom at night. To put it bluntly, they were just playthings. There was still no progress on his wife's side. If he brought them back, even if he didn't touch them at all, no one would believe that he really cultivated his body and mind. When would he be able to wash off the dirty water on his body? Therefore, he definitely couldn't accept them. This time, he seemed to be carefully sizing them up. They're too ugly. Don't. Digression, it's the end of the month again. Little angels, it's time to clear out the tickets. Review tickets, monthly tickets, and so on. Hurry up and vote. If they expire, they will be invalid. So, don't be careless and throw them all to you on one. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6653203. HTML. Please click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book. www.bicken.com Mobile Edition Reading Website. Bicken. Chapter 192. They're too ugly. I don't want them. His tone was flat. He retracted his gaze and leaned back lazily. Not to mention that the smiles of the 8 beauties froze on their faces. The expressions of the other people present also cracked a little. Everyone knew that these women were only palace maids in name. Whether they could really only be palace maids or not, they could only be palace maids in the end. In essence, they were just bed warmers. Even if it was not the emperor, it was still a noble prince. Naturally, they were all carefully selected. Otherwise, if they failed to win the emperor's favor, they would be accused of being disrespectful. In terms of color, they might be more outstanding than a regular talent show. After all, this was Qi Yuan casting a net from top to bottom. The scope was much wider than a talent show. How could they be ugly? I think they are all very beautiful. How are they ugly? Since father thinks they are beautiful, then take them all. Li Hongyuan said lightly. Bastard, the people your mother chose for you are simply. Because mother prepared them for me, father, you have some scruples. Originally you still wanted to take them all. This time, Lu Chengdi directly picked up a cup and smashed it. The person who was smashed didn't blush, but the others were scared half to death, especially those who saw this scene for the first time. As the saying went, when the emperor was angry, although the current situation was not to the point of millions of corpses, it was still absolutely frightening. They all panicked and shrank like quails. How could they be in the mood to show their beauty? Li Hongyuan frowned and flicked a few drops of water that splashed on his body. Father, your temper is getting more and more irritable. If you have excessive internal heat because of the hot weather, you should ask the imperial physician to prescribe some medicine to reduce internal heat. If you throw things randomly and I don't avoid them, won't I be disfigured? I have a foundation in martial arts and my hands and feet are quite agile. I can basically avoid them. What if you accidentally hit someone else, such as mother? What should I do? Lu Qingdi was easily angered by Li Hongyuan. Now he didn't want to scold him anymore. He just wanted to beat him. However, this evil creature wouldn't stand there obediently like the others. If you really ordered him to kneel down, he would do it. At that time, he wouldn't be able to do it. However, if he didn't vent his anger, he would panic and want to take something and hit him. Your Majesty, noble consort Su hurriedly reached out to stop him. Calm down. You know Yuaner's temper, but it's just as Yuana said, if you don't dodge and get hurt, you'll be the one to feel the heartache. In the end, Lu Qingdi didn't throw it again. Noble consort Su looked at Li Hongyuan again and felt helpless. Her son didn't pay much attention to other people, so why did he like to quarrel with his imperial father? Can't you stop making your imperial father angry? Li Hongyuan glanced at Lu Qingdi and curled the corners of his mouth. No matter how one looked at it, it seemed particularly sarcastic. To ordinary people, this was a provocation, not to mention that the other party was the emperor. However, after the provocative gaze, it was followed by noble consort Su's pleading gaze. In the end, Lu Qingdi endured it and looked away. Out of sight, out of mind. If you continue to be like this, go outside and kneel. Noble consort Su said rather sternly, but there was helplessness in her eyes. She signaled Li Hongyuan to control his temper and stop before going too far. Don't really annoy your imperial father. Li Hongyuan lowered his head slightly and lowered his eyes. He seemed to have obeyed noble consort Su's words and looked bored. Noble consort Su chuckled and returned to the 8 beautiful women. Imperial mother also thinks that they're pretty. Tell me which part of them are ugly. If you can really say 1, 2, 3, Imperial mother won't force you. If you can't, then it won't be as simple as just picking 2 people. Noble consort Su's expression indicated that she wanted him to take all of them back. Their skin is rough and dark, their legs are short, and their waists are hard. Their faces are covered with such a thick layer of powder that even the spots can be seen. After washing their faces, won't they just look like a ghost? I don't know what kind of inferior incense they use on their bodies, but it's so thick that it stinks. This son really doesn't know which part is good and which part is beautiful. Li Hongyuan said without the slightest trace of politeness. The 8 women, who had always been quite confident and satisfied with their external conditions, bit their lips at this moment, and tears welled up in their eyes. How could they feel wrong to be belittled like this? Noble consort Su was speechless. If you're so picky, then there probably aren't any beauties in the world. Which part is rough? Which part is dark? They're clearly all soft and tender. They're standing perfectly fine, so how can you tell that their waists are hard? Their legs are short. Noble consort Su glanced at them. Not all of them are short. Most people have spots on their faces, so it's normal to use powder to cover them up. How many women don't use powder? If you don't like this incense, then you can just change it to something you like. You're purely nitpicking, so it doesn't count. This son's requirements aren't high. Their skin should be like cream, whiter than snow, and even without makeup, they should still be outstanding and flawless. Their waists should be flexible but not fragile, and their legs should be slender and straight. They shouldn't use any incense on their bodies, and their sweat should also have a pleasant fragrance. Imperial mother, this son isn't being picky, but this son really can't do it with women like this. To put it bluntly, he was talking about Jingwan. If Jingwan wasn't like this now and had gone through a lot of hardships, he would probably say something else. Even if her skin was dark and rough, he could still say that she was wild and beautiful. How could this be called not high requirements? Could it be that all the women who served you in the past were of this standard? If that was the case, why didn't others notice it and let him take all of them? Don't think that her son was the only one who forcefully snatched women. It was just that the others weren't as serious and were overshadowed by his light. When I'm interested, I can naturally lower my standards. When he wasn't interested, he didn't want them if they didn't meet his standards. All right. Don't talk about this with Imperial Mother. If you don't want them, then forget it. Can Imperial Mother force you to do something like this? Noble consort Su waved her hand impatiently. It's this son's fault. I've troubled Imperial Mother. Li Hongyuan said rather apologetically. Noble consort Su was startled. You child, this isn't what Imperial Mother meant. Imperial Mother hasn't done anything yet, but you're already thinking too much. You're a grown man, but you're acting like a little girl now. She was helpless and amused. Li Hongyuan smiled. This son knows that Imperial Mother treats this son well and has always remembered it. It's just that this son has no way to repay you and even makes Imperial Mother sad from time to time. What are you saying? The more you say, the more inappropriate you become. Noble consort Su smiled, but turned her head and used a handkerchief to wipe the corners of her eyes. If you really feel this way, then will you listen to Imperial Mother for everything in the future? Li Hongyuan had never been a person who played with warmth. Just because he didn't play with it, the damage he caused when he did it once in a while was absolutely unprecedented. In the blink of an eye, he made noble consort Su cry, made Lu Chengdi soften into a mess, and made Princess Min Xiang's fear of him decrease sharply. The 8 women who had been humiliated by him couldn't help but steal glances at him. As for Li Hongming, he was a person who didn't see eye to eye. This kind of warmth would probably only intensify his disgust. However, these people, what did they have to do with him? Li Hongyuan shook his head. This son is used to messing around. I'm afraid I can't listen to anyone. So, Imperial Mother, this son is very sorry. If there's a next life. Silly child, you don't need to say anything. Imperial Mother knows. Noble Consort Su warmly said. Li Hongyuan smiled faintly. If there's a next life, it probably won't have anything to do with you. Maybe I'll cripple your son early on. Even if you're in a high position, I'll pull you down and trample you into the mud. I just don't know if the you at that time will still be a loving mother like you are now. The 8 women who had been degraded by Li Hongyuan naturally couldn't stay in Lu Chengdi's harem. Li Hongming also wouldn't want them. Those who cared about face probably wouldn't reach out their hands again. Let's ask, other people looked down on you yet you pulled them back. Do you want to be ridiculed, or do you want people to say that you have no taste? Of course, there were those who didn't take it seriously and didn't hesitate to express that their standards weren't as high as Jin Qinhuang's. After the 8 women were taken away, they couldn't hold it in anymore and cried their hearts out. Where was the arrogance and complacency that they had when they were first selected by Noble Consort Su? 'Cause they climbed high, they fell miserably. Although they were only 1 step higher than the others, it was enough to make the other women double the mockery. Who told you to be high and mighty, flaunting your prowess? Who told you to humiliate me? That was double the hatred. If you don't take revenge now, when will you? This joke was naturally quickly known by others. Everyone's reactions were different. Although the final result made many people satisfied, after all, the remaining women probably wouldn't be easily provoked. But it also made many people feel that it was really worthy of Su Shi's unfailing favor. They thought that she was used to consolidate favor, but in the end, she was chosen for her son. According to Lu Chengdi's favor towards Jin Qinhuang, Lu Chengdi naturally wouldn't object to choosing people for him. Perhaps he would be very happy. Noble Consort Su let Jin Qinhuang stir up the situation again. So basically, it was the same as overturning a boat with a pole. This woman really wasn't sinister and treacherous. She effortlessly dealt with the potential enemy. On the other hand, Qin Shufei only smiled faintly after hearing this. She said softly, "Everyone says that he is the most unrestrained and unrestrained. Who would have thought that he is actually the most infatuated and loyal? I really want to see how far he can go after they get married. Whether Luo San Gunyang is blessed or not, we will see when the time comes. Nyang Nyang, please forgive this servant. This servant didn't hear what you said clearly. Can you say it again?" The palace servant asked for forgiveness. Qin Shufei's temperament was good and her position was high enough. In the inner palace, she didn't fight or snatch. Although she wasn't as favored as Noble Consort Su, she wasn't considered bad. In the entire inner palace, there was probably no one who lived more comfortably than her. Because of this, the people who served her were more relaxed than other places and were slightly more daring. If it was another person, they wouldn't dare to say such words. Qin Shufei waved her hand. "It's nothing. Ben Gong was just talking to herself. That's right, go invite Princess Gong Qin over." In any case, she was her niece. She should warn her a few more times and not be incited by others to do things that she shouldn't do. Originally, she didn't need to do this kind of thing. However, that elder brother of hers had a violent temper and refused to speak properly. If she didn't explain things clearly to her, she might feel even more conflicted. After a long time, if other people whispered into her ear and she did something irreversible, it would be even more troublesome. Yes, Nyang Nyang. Li Hongyuan stayed for half a day and ate lunch with Noble Consort Su and the others. He didn't leave the temporary imperial residence and strolled back to his own courtyard. On the way, he met other brothers who looked at him with a bit of hidden bitterness. Li Hongyuan was naturally clear about the inner workings, but these things had nothing to do with him. If they really had such thoughts, how could they shrink back just because of a few words from him? In the end, they didn't want face and wanted to leave a good impression with their father. Since that was the case, what was the point of being tainted by beauties? You had to give up something to gain something. It was impossible to not give up anything and still want to get everything. Li Hongyuan had 4 maidservants. 2 were left in the temporary imperial residence and 2 were left outside. At this time, Li Hongyuan looked at the maidservants standing in front of him with lowered eyebrows. To be honest, they could be considered first-class beauties and weren't inferior to the previous 8. In the past, as long as they did their jobs well, Li Hongyuan couldn't be bothered to look at them. But now, noble consort Su hadn't sent anyone to him for several years. He hadn't taken care of anyone for only a few months, but she had already started to care about her son. Of course, if he refused, she wouldn't force him. However, the 4 maidservants by his side were all virgins. It was said that some people's eyes were very sharp. If this continued, sooner or later, clues would be found out. His marriage with Wan had already been set. Even if it was discovered, it didn't matter. It would definitely not be linked to Wan. At most, it would be another round of wild guesses. For example, he was actually impotent. As long as these words didn't come from his wife's mouth, who would like to say it? However, it was still troublesome. If her fiancé was impotent as his fiancé, she would definitely be involved in the rumors and be pointed at by others. Just thinking about it made him feel uncomfortable. Also, his so-called parents would probably be so worried that their hair would turn white. Even if they lost all their hair, it would have nothing to do with him. However, he was afraid that his ears would grow calluses. Therefore, it was better for these 4 maidservants to lose their virginity. Find yourself a man and consummate your marriage tonight. After the princess consort marries into the family, we will hold the wedding. Their master had always been too lazy to talk to them. Although they didn't know as much as the personal bodyguards and shadow guards, they were very clear that the Luo family's 3rd young lady had an extraordinary position in their master's heart. Originally, when they were suddenly called over, they were uneasy. Did they do something wrong to make their master unhappy? For them, there was nothing more frightening than this. Their master's temper was indeed bad, but in fact, as long as they did their jobs well, their days were the most leisurely and relaxed. Because from the beginning, they had already given up the idea of climbing into the bed. They didn't need to compete for favor. Everyone was the same, so naturally they could get along with each other in harmony. There was no scheming against each other, and their monthly salary was also high. In the entire capital, there was probably no other maidservant who could compare to them. Losing this job was the last thing they wanted. However, what did their master say? Find someone to consummate their marriage. Did they hear wrongly? Why, is there a problem? Both of them trembled and replied without thinking. Replying to master, there is no problem. In that case you may leave. After the 2 of them left and returned to their rooms, they couldn't help but look at each other. What did he mean by no problem? There was a big problem. She wanted a girl to find a man for herself, and she even had to consummate the marriage tonight. She couldn't play with them like this. If master wanted to marry them off, he could have just pointed to someone. Obeying master's orders was a matter of course, and it was more than awkward. Now that they were offering themselves to a man to sleep with, they didn't have to worry about being rejected, but they would definitely be looked at strangely. Even if they got married in the future, the other party would still have a knot in his heart. For a moment, they wanted to cry but had no tears. Qing Shi, what should we do? Qing Gu tugged at her handkerchief, her face full of anxiety. Don't you have someone in your heart? Go find him. I'll just randomly find someone. Qing Shi appeared to be more indifferent. But. No buts. Master means what he says. If he wants to find a man, we have to find one. If he wants to consummate our marriage tonight, we have to consummate our marriage tonight. Is Qing Ci the same as Qing Fu? Most likely. Master has always treated everyone equally. I'll go find him tonight. If he's not willing, I'll just randomly find someone. Qingge said in a fit of pique and helplessness. What about you? Do you have someone in mind? Qing Shi smiled faintly and didn't say anything. As for Eunuch Mu, who was basically always at the side, he also didn't know what to say. Sure enough, his master was a scourge. Not only did he harm outsiders, but he also harmed his own people. In any case, those beautiful servant girls also served him. Even if they didn't make any contributions or hard work, they were still under his name. Not to mention what the people who were chosen by those servant girls would think. If they were married off in the future, it wouldn't sound good. Fine, at that time it was the princess consort who married them off. At worst, the princess consort would bear the title of a jealous woman. It was a small matter. Fart. Eunuch Mu kept a straight face and cursed seriously in his heart. If the princess consort knew the cause and effect, what kind of expression would she have? Then he glanced at an E, who was also pretending to be a blockhead. As the head of the secret guards and the leader of the guards, because of his special status, he shouldn't be like other secret guards who had to wait until he retired to get married. However, the 4 servant girls only knew his identity on the surface. Maybe he had been targeted at this moment. Eunuch Mu was a little gloating. An E. Master. An E immediately knelt down on one knee and waited for orders. Send someone to inform Imperial Uncle Zhong that this prince feels that there are too few people serving him. Yes. So, not long after Lu Chengdi woke up from his afternoon nap and was about to read the memorial, Prince Zhong came to the door. Brother, I heard that there are 8 beauties, but nephew Hongyuan dislikes them very much. He dislikes them, but I don't dislike them. Give them all to me. It happens that I didn't bring many servants with me this time. Lu Chengdi looked at him for a moment. This younger brother was also a person who didn't abstain from meat and vegetables. He didn't do his job all day long. If the upper beam was not straight, the lower beam would be crooked. Even his sons were a group of bastards. However, he owed him after all. He knew what he was doing and didn't commit any major crimes. At most, it was just some trifles that attracted cats and dogs. It didn't matter if he raised him for a lifetime. Even if he died and his son ascended the throne, he was still an elder who didn't participate in the party struggle. Naturally, he wouldn't be mean to him. As for his children and grandchildren after his death, he couldn't care so much. Go to the imperial consort. Take it easy on yourself. Don't hurt yourself. Prince Zhong laughed carelessly. Brother, don't worry. You know. Lu Chengdi waved his hand, telling him to get lost quickly. It was annoying just to look at him. Prince Zhong quickly got lost. He went to the imperial consort Su and asked for the girls. Then he proudly took the 8 dispirited beauties away. He didn't even care about those who were gossiping. What was face? How much was that thing worth? What was real? Everything else was fake. Don't think that he didn't hear the jealousy in some people's words. Therefore, when he met people who didn't take face seriously, he was the only one who was depressed. However, after Prince Zhong went back, the smile on his face disappeared. It could be seen that he wasn't as happy as he looked on the surface. It was true that he had been muddling along, but it didn't mean that he didn't have a brain. It was just that reality made him compromise again and again. In the end, he got used to it. He was used to making jokes and lowering his head in front of the strong. If his arm couldn't twist the thigh of others, then he wouldn't twist it. Isn't it good to just muddle along and wait for death? Prince Zhong laughed at himself. Then he grabbed the beauties with each hand and entered the room. Life was short. It was time to enjoy it. Because he was in a bad mood, it was inevitable that he wouldn't be so gentle. In addition, it was the first time that the beauties had sex with him. The result could be imagined. Prince Zhong's consort was deposed, but his 2 concubines were still there. Therefore, it seemed that no one thought that Prince Zhong's 2 concubines were actually full. Then what should Ruan Fengfei do? promote her to princess consort, or demote a concubine, or break the tradition and make her the third concubine. The first was obviously impossible. Lu Qingdi firmly believed in Master Liaochen's words and would definitely suppress Ruan Fengfei. The second was that in order to compensate Prince Zhong, his 2 concubines were of good birth and had children. They didn't do anything wrong. What reason did he have to demote them? Then the third might be the only choice. However, the ancestral law was there. How could she deserve it? In the end, she might have the title of concubine, but her name wouldn't be on the Imperial Jade Archive. The result would be neither fish nor fowl. So far, who had realized this? Li Hongyuan probably didn't realize that Ruan Fengfei wasn't worthy of his attention. But there were 2 people who definitely knew. They were Prince Zhong's 2 concubines. Their family backgrounds were similar. Without that vulgar and stupid consort suppression, it was very likely that one of them would be promoted. Yes, what they saw was not only the threat that Ruan Fengfei brought, but also the opportunity. Why did they have to demote her to make room for her? Knowing Prince Zhong's character, they naturally didn't count on him. The 2 arranged the 8 women very tacitly. It was still uncertain whether the 2 who were already favored would be promoted to concubines. After all, there were 6 more. They couldn't promote all of them to concubines after they were favored. There was also a quota for the number of concubines a prince could have. Prince Zhong was full and the depression in his heart also disappeared. Anyway, this benefit was his. Send an invitation to Miss Ruan. Invite her to the manor to admire the flowers and drink tea. Prince Zhong ordered the 2 concubines. The 2 looked at each other and smiled at the same level. Yes, Your Highness. Digression. Dear, Happy New Year. It's the end of the month, the tickets are cleared out. Look at your evaluation tickets and monthly tickets. If you have any, hurry up and vote. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6653205. HTML. Click here to report an error. No registration required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book. www.bicken.com mobile edition. Chapter 193. Prince Zhong's side concubine invited Ruan Fengfei because she wanted to know her temperament. No matter how much she heard, if there was no interaction, everything was in vain. As the saying goes, seeing is believing and hearing is false. Sometimes seeing may not be true. Therefore, to want to see him or her, no matter who it was a very normal thing. The 2 side concubines were about the same age as Ruan Fengfei's mother. However, if you were going to snatch their rice bowl, they would not be like your mother, protecting you everywhere and thinking for you in everything. On the contrary, if possible, they would definitely want to trample you to death. Wait, the 2 side concubines. She finally reacted in hindsight. Madame Ruan raised her eyebrows. Other than that, she did not have any other reaction. The current Ruan Fengfei was not so much her daughter, but rather her subordinate. That was something that she should face by herself. As her superior, there was no need for him to worry about it, let alone help her come up with a plan. Besides, he had already taught her the things that belonged to the harem. If she was still so easily stepped on, it would not be a pity even if such a good-for-nothing died. Ruan Fengfei did not wear a veil. The ugly scar on her face pierced into the eyes of everyone who saw her. No matter who it was, they were shocked at first. When they looked at her again, they had a different expression. It was not known if it was more disgust or more pity. There was no doubt that Ruan Fengfei was unlucky. It was better to stay away. As the saying goes, if you don't go crazy, you won't survive. Ruan Fengfei was now completely unconcerned. Her spirit looked better than before the accident. However, after everyone glanced at her, they hurriedly looked away. Therefore, they did not realize that her entire body was full of charm. Before her mother received the invitation and called her out, she was still fooling around with her new, beautiful maid. Madame Ruan glanced at her. "Restrain yourself. If something happens to your father now, you won't have a good time." Ruan Fengfei did not seem to hear it. However, her posture became dignified, restrained, and gentle. Madame Ruan handed the invitation to her. "Do as you see fit. If there's nothing else, you can go back." Ruan Fengfei sneered. "Mother is really heartless. Yesterday she was still his sweetheart. Now, she had become an existence that he could command at will." Although she was smiling on the surface, she still felt a huge difference in her heart. Just like a noble lady who had fallen into debauchery, even if she had prepared herself mentally, it would still take a process to completely accept it from her body to her heart. This process was destined to be unknown, and it was bound to be painful. Madame Ruan's expression didn't change. "If you want to blame someone, blame your bad luck. You can't be a noble lady." Ruan Fengfei coldly tugged at the corner of her mouth. "Don't worry, I won't let go of anyone who caused me to be in this situation today. As long as they weren't dissolute by nature, how many women would choose not to be a good person and live a clean life?" The next day, Ruan Fengfei tidied up and went out as a guest. She still had to maintain her manners. Imitating Sun Yijia's makeup, Ruan Fengfei also put on makeup for herself, but the style was completely different. Because the pigments were far less complete than Jingwan's, the choice was smaller. Moreover, she didn't know that some things couldn't be used on the body. She didn't spend any effort to cover up the black line, but used it as the foundation. It should be said that Ruan Fengfei was indeed a talented girl who was all-round. The final effect was very good. It covered up the elegance of a hibiscus emerging from the water, and presented a different kind of charm and enchanting. Ruan Fengfei hooked her dark red lips and smiled. So what if she was disfigured? Men couldn't escape from her palms either. How could these two old women compare to her? However, it had to be said that Ruan Fengfei's experience was still too little. Behind the open and aboveboard there might be a trap. When she knew that the person behind the scenes was Li Hongyuan, she should have enough vigilance. However, Li Hongyuan had been in the underworld for decades in his previous life. In this life, he had made arrangements early and knew what Ruan Fengfei had done. To this extent, if he couldn't deal with a woman in the boudoir, he shouldn't expect to have any ambitions, let alone change his fate. In the end, Ruan Fengfei didn't know Li Hongyuan and didn't know how capable he was. If she knew, she wouldn't be more careful, but completely hide and wouldn't try to provoke him. That was like an ant trying to shake a tree. The disparity in strength was too great. There was no comparison at all. Ruan Fengfei was led to the backyard of Prince Zhong's courtyard. Then Ruan Fengfei saw Prince Zhong in the pavilion. If she still didn't react, then she was really hopelessly stupid. She subconsciously took a step back. Then she realized something and looked back. Sure enough, all the people she brought were invited away. 3 steps away from her, it wasn't the powerful old woman, but a guard with a sword. Ruan Fengfei clenched her fists. Because she was not in good spirits recently, she naturally lost a lot of weight. Her joints were distinct and her skin was very thin, as if it was transparent. Therefore, the blue veins on the back of her hand were clearly visible. Knowing that she couldn't leave now, she took a deep breath and walked towards Prince Zhong step by step. She didn't know that she was actually walking towards hell. That nightmarish night, a moment that she never wanted to recall, was about to play out in broad daylight. Compared to that time when she couldn't see anything, everything that happened during the day was completely reflected in her eyes and engraved in her heart. Everyone's expressions, everyone's movements. She was like a masochist, unwilling to close her eyes from beginning to end. Even if she had exquisite makeup, no one gave her a chance to show it. Moreover, in Prince Zhong's eyes, that enchanting makeup was not an ordinary kind of hateful. She was already his woman. Who else did she want to seduce? After a bucket of water, her makeup was smeared, but she didn't wash it clean. Mixed together, It was a disgusting, dirty water. However, this also allowed Prince Zhong to see her true appearance under the makeup. What the hell was this? Although the #1 beauty in the capital had always been controversial, many people recognized Ruan Fengfei. Now that she had become this ugly, Prince Zhong's evil fire burned even more. Even if she had fallen for sex, this voluntary fall was a kind of enjoyment, while forced violence was a kind of torture. It was not only physical but also spiritual. Unexpectedly, she thought of the first time they had touched, that rough palm. Yet, those lowly people who had defiled her were still living well in a place where she could not see. She did not care. She kept them and slowly played with them. That was just self-comfort after not being able to take revenge. Probably because it was really too disgusting, Ruan Fengfei couldn't help but vomit. Prince Zhong was furious. She dared to disgust him with such a ghastly appearance. He ordered people to force the things she vomited back. Ruan Fengfei also grew up in luxury. Although she couldn't be compared to the nobles, she was still a gold and jade. Today. Such filth naturally the more was forced down the more disgusting it was. The more disgusting it was, the more she vomited. It was simply a vicious cycle. In the end, when Ruan Fengfei was released, she collapsed to the ground, her body twitching slightly. She only felt that her liver and intestines were cut to pieces, and a yellowish liquid was still flowing out from the corner of her mouth. "Someone come, take Miss Ruan away and wash her face properly." Ruan Fengfei was dragged away by 2 women. Ruan Fengfei was combed neatly. If one didn't look at her dispirited appearance, she seemed to be a pampered girl in the palm of the hand. At this time, it was almost an hour since Ruan Fengfei entered the courtyard. Just like the previous time, they had a sense of propriety. Even if she was injured, it was only some minor injuries. After wearing clothes, it couldn't even be seen at all. At this time, Ruan Fengfei didn't shout hysterically. Instead, she appeared very quiet. There was no hatred in her eyes for these people who humiliated her. Anyone who saw it would feel strange. Prince Zhong looked at her and confirmed that she wasn't stupid because of the blow. He sneered. "Once, outsiders praised you so highly that even many men heard about you. They said that you were really noble and unattainable. It turns out that in your bones, you are a promiscuous woman. It can be seen that this rumor, whether good or bad, is not necessarily credible." Ruan Fengfei raised her head and looked at him. Her eyes were like a pool of stagnant water. "Your Highness, may I ask why?" Prince Zhong understood her meaning immediately. He sneered. "A woman who is even worse than a girl in a brothel. If you want to ask why, it's like asking those men who often sleep with prostitutes why they sleep with a woman who has slept with others. It's as ridiculous as asking those men who often sleep with prostitutes why they sleep with a woman who has slept with others. Besides, this prince is playing in my own home. Could it be that someone will spread the news?" Ruan Fengfei warned herself not to be angry. She revealed a trace of weakness and helplessness. Why does Prince say this? Even if this subject and Prince have been intimate, I have never been tainted with other men. Why are Prince's words so hurtful? What you have done so. Tears rolled down her cheeks silently. With this man's bad nature, he naturally couldn't see a woman like this. However, Ruan Fengfei's face was disfigured, so the effect was greatly reduced. In addition, Prince Zhong knew the cause and effect. Not only did he not pity her, but he was also furious because she was still pretending at this moment. He waved his hand and slapped her. "Slut." Ruan Fengfei didn't have much strength at this time. This slap directly knocked her to the ground. Prince Zhong grabbed her hair and pulled her up. He leaned close to her ear. "You ran out to meet men in the middle of the night and ended up sleeping with a group of men. Then you schemed against this prince and made this prince take the blame. You still dare to say that it has nothing to do with others. Just a piece of trash like you wants to cling on to this prince and continue to live a comfortable life of luxury. Wishful thinking. If you behave, this prince will still give you a bite to eat. If you don't, I'll directly throw you into a brothel." Who did Prince hear this from to slander this subject's daughter? This subject's daughter really didn't. Ruan Fengfei cried uncontrollably. On the surface she was like this, but in her heart she was filled with hatred. She had painstakingly schemed to choose the lesser of two evils, but in the end she was still exposed. Why did he always have to go against her? You still dare to quibble? Everyone knew that there was something fishy about the situation at that time. Prince Zhong also deeply hated himself for being so easily tricked. After knowing the whole story, he really wanted to slap this slut to death. Therefore, after this man was schemed against, he became angry out of humiliation instead of reflecting on himself. If she said another word, Prince Zhong might really choke her to death in anger. Ruan Fengfei could only shut up. When she couldn't argue and showed weakness, Ruan Fengfei also put away her pitiful appearance. Prince, my father is still the Grand Secretary of the Cabinet, Prince Zhong sneered. If this prince reveals everything about you, how can that old thing still be the Grand Secretary? With such a bad family style, the daughter he raised is so hypocritical and morally corrupt. What qualifications does he have to assist the emperor in ruling the world? Even if he doesn't do anything, how long can he last after being angered by you, this unfilial daughter? Do you really think that you are the smartest person in the world? You don't know that in the eyes of others, you are just a jumping clown. Hearing this, the first person Ruan Fengfei thought of was Li Hongyuan. Other than him there was no one else. However, even if she was certain that it was him, she didn't have any evidence. Recalling what Li Hongyuan said, he wouldn't easily take her life. Everything had just begun. Finally, a trace of fear for that man was born in her heart. At the same time, she also felt endless jealousy and hatred towards Jingwen. Clearly, that man was the first person she fancied. Don't take what you think is a big deal. To be honest, this prince is a single prince without power and influence. Under normal circumstances, I really don't dare to go against the Grand Secretary. Unfortunately, your Ruan family has declined and lost too quickly. And all of this is because of you. If you don't want the Ruan family to be completely overturned, remember to be on call. When this prince is happy, I might even give you some face as a secondary consort. In any case, this prince is also very excited to see you. Next time when you come, wash your face clean. It is obviously very ugly, but you still painted it so seductively. Who else do you want to seduce? Sure enough, you are a slut who is not content with her family. After venting, his heart was probably satisfied. Prince Zhong asked someone to tidy her up and applied some medicine to her face. He even carefully put on a veil for her. Ruan Fengfei was sent to the carriage. The maidservant trembled with fear and lowered her head, not daring to look at her. Although it was not obvious, as someone who served her closely, how could she not notice it at all? Ruan Fengfei's face was like stagnant water. Everything was not going according to plan. The repeated setbacks made her sober up a lot. In the face of absolute power, no matter how many schemes she had, she could not use them. It did not matter if you were crazy, or crazy. One person could defeat 10 people and make you unable to move. Just because the other party was a prince and was born in the imperial family. Other than that, he could still suppress her to the point that she could not breathe. She used to be disdainful of the imperial princesses and did not take them seriously. But now, if she was a princess, even if she was not favored, she would not be bullied like this. The imperial family, the imperial power. But now was not the time to think about this. What could she do to get out of this predicament? After thinking about it, her mother seemed to be the only way out she could find. Li Hongyuan was obviously not as simple as he looked on the surface. Then, was it possible to use this as a threat to make him hesitate to shoot the rat for fear of breaking the vases? But her mother did not have such an idea at all. The one who was really afraid to shoot the rat for fear of breaking the vases was her. She was really useless. After operating for so many years, in the end, she was still timid. Ruan Fengfei returned to the Ruan family. She did not want to see anyone in the Ruan family right now. However, things did not go as she wished. When she passed by the small garden, she met Ruan Ruizhong, who was drinking tea and playing chess with her. A piece of trash who could not even protect his wife and daughter, and still had the leisure to be here alone. Men were indeed not good things. However, she did not see that he had aged countless times compared to a month ago. In the past, because of proper maintenance, he looked much younger than his actual age. But now it was completely consistent. She did not notice that this man, who had always had high daily requirements, was getting more and more decadent. He had always been meticulous, but there were more strands of messy hair. She also did not notice that he had not touched his favorite flowers and trees for a long time. And in front of her eyes, what was displayed on the chessboard was not leisure, but anxiety and powerlessness. He was a man with his own self-esteem and pride. A month ago it could be said that he could call the wind and summon the rain. Now he was isolated and helpless, tasting the hypocrisy of the world that he had not tasted in the past few decades. Because he was the head of the family, the pillar of the family. Everyone had places to express their sorrow, but he did not, and he could not say it. To a certain extent, the pain in his heart compared to others would only be worse. He bore the burden of the entire family's decline. It was already a miracle that he had not fallen yet. Greetings to father. Ruan Fengfei could not help but speak from her heart. No matter what she thought in her heart, she still needed his protection. Ruan Ruizhong nodded. I heard from your mother that Prince Zhong's concubine invited you to have tea. How was your trip? Except for the stagnant water in his eyes that could not be melted, he could be considered gentle. Father, don't worry. The two concubines are quite amiable. That's good. Once you enter the prince's mansion, it will not be the same as at home. You forget it. Your mother will explain these things to you in detail. Go back and rest. Ruan Ruizhong's feelings for Ruan Fengfei became more and more complicated. It was no longer pure love. Except for the unconscious alienation, perhaps it was mixed with the hatred that he himself had not noticed. Ruan Fengfei was also favored. If it was someone who was not favored, they would have been silently disposed of. Even if they did not die, they would quickly fade out of everyone's sight. From this point of view, Ruan Fengfei was very fortunate. However, she herself did not realize it. She took other people's kindness for granted. When there was a little unhappiness, she would naturally feel that others had wronged her. Ruan Fengfei was not the only one like this, there were many. Then daughter will take her leave first. Ruan Fengfei left. But after taking a few steps, she stopped and hesitated. Father, please take care of your body. Everything is daughter's fault. If Ruan Fengfei stammered, daughter has nothing to be unwilling about. Ruan Ruizhong looked disappointed. Don't think too much. Go back and rest. Perhaps he thought that he understood Ruan Fengfei's unfinished words, but in fact Ruan Fengfei didn't say or do anything. She just understood the most basic human nature. If she retreated a little in order to advance and sacrificed herself at the right time, she would get more pity. Even if she abandoned him, he would hesitate and feel guilty. This guilt was her opportunity. No matter whether this opportunity was useful or not, there was no harm in saving it in advance. Knowing that the maid who was newly assigned to Ruan Fengfei was valued by her, when they saw her return, the others did not rush forward. However, it was different from what she had expected. When no one touched Ruan Fengfei, a sense of disgust suddenly rose in her heart. A creepy feeling started from the skin that came into contact with her and spread to her entire body. Ruan Fengfei gave him a backhand slap. No matter how a man looked like a woman, no matter how beautiful he dressed up as a woman, it couldn't change the fact that he was a man, especially when she saw the evil root that didn't match his appearance at all last night. The maid did not know how she had angered her and hurriedly knelt down to beg for forgiveness. Ruan Fengfei looked down from above, her eyes engraved with malice. All men in the world should die. Bring me the whip. Ruan Fengfei did not whip people for a day or two. Once or twice. Her whip was specially made. On the surface, it looked like a layer of fluff. In fact, the fluff was very hard. After being whipped, the skin would definitely split open and the scars left behind could not be removed. If she wanted to whip people, no one around her dared to stop her. She took the whip and shook it. With a swoosh, the whip lashed out. The maid let out a muffled groan and did not dare to move. She vented everything that she had suffered before at this moment. Her strikes were vicious and ruthless. However, after a few strikes, her hands became weak. The previous encounter had exhausted her too much and her stomach was empty. However, if she were to eat now, she would definitely not be able to eat. She threw the whip to the maid next to her. "You do it. If one of the whips is not deep enough and there is no blood, I will whip you 10 times. That maid happened to have eaten the whip before, so she did not dare to not use her full strength. Ruan Fengfei sat to the side and a maidservant served her tea. She glanced at the yellowish tea and remembered the filth she had vomited earlier. Her stomach churned again and she immediately smashed the cup. Damned cheap maidservant. No one knew what she had experienced. Naturally, they did not know how they had angered her. They could only hurriedly kneel down and beg for forgiveness. Ruan Fengfei tore off her veil and threw it to the side. The marks on her face were exposed and she looked more and more like a real evil spirit. "Don't worry. You all have a share. One by one." She did as she said. One by one, one by one, one by one. More than half of the people in the courtyard could not escape. Moreover, they were not allowed to make a sound. Whoever dared to make a sound would be given 10 more whips. Their clothes were torn and the flesh under the clothes was lacerated. The air was filled with a faint smell of blood. Looking at their painful expressions, and even those who could not hold on had already fainted, she smiled very happily. At this moment, she discovered that there was no color more beautiful than red in the world, especially that blood-like red. She even reached out and dipped her hand in the blood and licked it. "Oh, it's actually so delicious." "Fengfei, what are you doing?" Old Madame Ruan knew that Ruan Fengfei was venting her anger on the servants but did not care. Thinking that she had suffered a loss, it did not matter if she vented her anger. However, it continued for a long time. Moreover, if she did not stop it, she was afraid that someone would die. Thus she made a trip. However, the scene she saw made her frown. This daughter, even the most basic human nature was slowly degenerating. This kind of person, once she could not control her, she would immediately bite her master. Old Madame Ruan clenched her fists behind her back. Letting her mother do it personally is not a bad idea. Digression. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6653207. HTML chapter error. Click here to report. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book. www.bicken.com mobile edition reading website. Bicken. Chapter 194. Letting her mother do it herself isn't a bad idea. Li Hongyuan stirred the tea, paused, and put the cup back. He didn't know what method Luo Peishan was going to use to process the tea leaves. If he was slow, it would take a few months, but if he was fast, the tea leaves would be ready by this time. No matter what, he was the one who picked them, so there was nothing wrong with going to take a look. As for Ruan Fengfei, he basically didn't need to do anything. With Uncle Wang there, he only needed to watch over them at the right time. As for Ruan Ruizhong, he only needed to give him one more straw. This could be delayed. He already had a plan for when to make a move. It wouldn't take too long. In any case, before returning to the capital, everything should be settled. "Who did you look for last night?" Li Hongyuan looked indifferently at Qing Shi and Qing Gu, who were bringing the young maidservants to serve lunch. He didn't suspect that they would disobey his orders, nor did he have any interest in the private affairs of his subordinates. It was just that when he saw them, he suddenly thought of it and was a little curious. Qing Ji's hand trembled and almost dropped the plate in her hand. On the other hand, Qing Shi was very calm and naturally reached out to catch it. She then placed it on the table. If she smashed the plate now, it would be equivalent to smashing her little life. Li Hongyuan wouldn't take their lives for such a small matter, but it was certain that he wouldn't let them continue to serve by his side. They would return to where they came from. As for the maidservants who knew some things about Li Hongyuan, even without Li Hongyuan's order, Eunuch Mu wouldn't let them leave in one piece. Not being able to speak or write was the most basic. That was equivalent to being a cripple. Moreover, if they were sent back by their master, there would definitely be a problem. Who else would use them? Among the servants, the situation of flattering the strong and stepping on the weak was even more serious. When in power, those who were older than you would affectionately call you elder sister or master. Once you lost power, they would immediately spit at you and squeeze you to death. Qing Gu looked at Qing Shi gratefully. Sure enough, she hadn't trained enough and still needed to be sharpened. Serving by Li Hongyuan's side was definitely a very tough thing to do. Basically, being able to smoothly serve under him for 3 months, then if it was outside, others would probably give him a thumbs up and say, "You're not flustered in the face of change, amazing." Who knew that this was the most basic thing in Jin Qin Wang Fu? Of course, when faced with the master's sullen face, no one could withstand it. It was clearly something that would make a girl so ashamed that she would be unable to show her face. Just because the master didn't care at all, she had to also not care when replying. Therefore, after putting down the things in her hands, she dismissed the young servant girl and respectfully replied. Replying to master, "It's the brat in charge of all the flowers and plants in the prince's mansion." Qing Shi was the first to speak. Replying to master, "It's the guards." Li Hongyuan raised his hand and Qingga hurriedly shut her mouth. The guards he brought weren't few, but compared to the other brothers, there weren't many. If he only chose from the guards, other than an it didn't matter who it was. The maidservants around him also knew their limits. Those people couldn't be chosen, so they should have a plan in their hearts. However, gardener, you chose it yourself. Because of Jingwan, Li Hongyuan valued the flowers and plants in the prince's mansion very much. And the things he looked at, for the people who took care of them, their value would naturally multiply. Therefore, gardeners who didn't have any status elsewhere, in Jin Qin Wang Fu, there were many people who fought to be gardeners. Even if they didn't know how to do it, they would also secretly learn, hoping that one day they could compete for the position. In the prince's mansion, there were hundreds of servants, but those who could see Li Hongyuan were actually a minority among the minority. And the people who served by his side were naturally the targets of other people's flattery. However, these people were also not easy to see. No matter where they were, they paid attention to the rules and did their own things. The prince's mansion was so big, but the places they could go were very small. If they dared to walk around randomly, once they were caught, being sold was a light punishment. Although the gardener was slightly valued by Li Hongyuan, it was different from the Yahuan at his side. The Yahuan could know some things, but the gardener couldn't. The reason why Li Hongyuan would bring the gardener over was only because when next year's summer vacation, Wan would be with him and not with the Luo family. No matter if it was inside the summer palace or the other courtyards outside, they all needed to be meticulously taken care of. Qing Shi naturally also knew this situation and hesitated. "It was he who came to find me. Ben Wang actually didn't know that there was such an idiot like you by my side. Just a random man who came to find you and you responded. This matter, how did he know?" In Jin Qin Wang Fu, except for a few people, everyone else also thought that the 4 Yahuan at his side were all there to warm his bed. This matter, if you said it was big, then it was small. But no matter what, the matter related to him was leaked out. Someone must have neglected their duty. At that time, there were only these few people present, so they all knelt down and begged for forgiveness. If there was one matter that was leaked out, it meant that other matters were also possible. The gardener slipped over at the fastest speed. Originally, because he had won the beauty, he was flushed with success. But suddenly such a thing happened. For a moment he was stunned. Facing his master, who was imposing without being angry, he knelt on the ground and trembled. However, Li Hongyuan wasn't interested in handling this matter himself. Mu Ren, Ben Wang only wants results. Yes, master. Mu Gonggong hurriedly responded. He was Li Hongyuan's close attendant and also the steward of Jin Qin Wang Fu. When there was no accident, naturally everything was fine. But once something happened, it would be difficult for him to absolve himself from the blame. Therefore, at this time, Mu Gonggong also hated to the point of wanting to kill someone. Except for an everyone else retreated. Master, do you want to eat? An excellent shadow guard serving his master's meal was also not a problem. Li Hongyuan looked at the large table full of exquisite dishes and didn't have much appetite. Now, it seemed that he didn't want to eat alone. But now, he was in the temporary residence. He didn't even need to eat lunch and left in a hurry. His good Mufei would probably nag again. He ate more or less, but the main dishes on the table were not touched. In the summer, who would eat those oily and greasy things? The cook he brought naturally knew his taste. Therefore, these main dishes were in fact sent by Lu Qingdi and concubine Su. Even if they knew his taste, they were afraid that he wouldn't eat well and said that he ate too bland. Therefore they kept sending. Li Hongyuan ate a little and put down his chopsticks. Take it down. You can divide it. Thank you, master, for the reward. Ani said. After going out for a moment, he came in with the other brothers and nimbly cleaned up the table. For the servants, these were not the leftovers of the master, but a gift. Without the master's order, the people in the kitchen could only secretly drool after receiving the food. After all, the food that was served to Li Hongyuan, even if it was a small cabbage, was carefully cultivated and extraordinary, not to mention the other dishes. The ingredients used were all first class. Some of the dishes only had one ingredient, and perhaps they would not be able to earn money for the ingredients in the kitchen in their lifetime. How could they not be envious? On Eunuch Mu's side, the results of the interrogation had already come out. It was just a coincidence. The gardener had a bear's heart and leopard's guts. He had long taken a fancy to Qing Shi, but he knew that she was the master's person, so he had been bitterly suppressing himself. Who knew that yesterday in the garden, he accidentally heard Qing Shi talking to a guard. The general idea was vague, but he understood the essence. Then he excitedly ran out to find Qing Shi. However, he didn't dare to break into the master's courtyard, so he could only wait outside while scratching his ears and cheeks. Even after confirming that Qing Shi was in the main room, he had been anxious and uneasy. He waited until night time when he finally saw Qing Shi come out. Because he had waited for too long from the beginning, he was worried whether Qing Shi would refuse or whether she already had someone else in her heart. When he saw her, he didn't think about anything else and directly went up to her. Therefore, from the beginning, the gardener didn't think about whether Qing Shi was a virgin or not. Even if she wasn't, he wouldn't have minded. In fact, Qing Shi had a bit of a broken jar and had the idea of falling for whoever she met. Otherwise, she wouldn't have dawdled until night time. The gardener's appearance was out of her expectations. At that time, she thought that if someone took the initiative, it would save her the embarrassment of taking the initiative. Then, things became so muddle-headed. Only then did Qing Shi realize that there were some problems, but it was too late for regrets. Therefore, she wanted to find an opportunity to explain to the master, but Li Hongyuan asked first. Eunuch Mu had used some extreme methods and combined with the confessions of several people. He couldn't find any loopholes. Even so, Qing Ji's new lover didn't notice that someone had heard the conversation between Qing Gu and him. Whether it was because he heard something too shocking or not, his attention was all on Qing Gu. He had neglected his duty, so he had to be punished. Qing Gu was also punished. As for Qing Shi, she was negligent and didn't understand the situation clearly before she ran away with someone. That was even more unforgivable. Therefore, these two pairs of mandarin ducks were not left behind. The most miserable one was the gardener, who was punished severely by Eunuch Mu. He was already half dead. He directly lay in front of Li Hongyuan and couldn't get up. Even so, he still banged his head on the ground and begged Li Hongyuan not to punish Qing Shi. He was willing to bear the punishment for the two of them. Li Hongyuan was infatuated with Jingwan, but it didn't mean that he would have compassion when he saw other infatuated people. He didn't care about other people, so he didn't look at them and directly got up to leave. Eunuch Mu was about to follow when Li Hongyuan suddenly stopped and turned around. 20 planks. Eunuch Mu's heart trembled. He felt that he was wronged, but he didn't dare to plead for mercy. Yes, Li Hongyuan was already used to it. If it was someone else who didn't understand his temperament, it would only be more troublesome. After Li Hongyuan walked away, Eunuch Mu's face was a bit gloomy. He raised his foot to kick the gardener, but he was blocked halfway by Qing Shi. That's right, the 4 maidservants of Qing Shi, Gu, and Fu were not delicate. They all had a certain foundation in martial arts. Li Hongyuan didn't need those maidservants who couldn't lift their shoulders. When needed, he could use women as men and men as livestock. He wouldn't pity them because they were young or because they were women. There was only one person he would pity. Being blocked, Eunuch Mu's face turned even darker, but he could only glare at Qing Shi. There was nothing else he could do. He was Li Hongyuan's personal attendant and Jin Qin Wang Fu's steward. These were all true. However, the people around Li Hongyuan, the phenomenon of flattering the high and stepping on the low was the lightest. Because it was impossible to put other people's eyes in front of him. Thus, as long as the master was not biased, even if you had more power, it was useless. If there was an internal strife, Li Hongyuan would be able to sweep them all with a spoon. Those that Eunuch Mu could casually step on were those that couldn't squeeze in front of Li Hongyuan. Eunuch Mu could only flick his sleeves and leave. When there were only 2 people left, Qing Shi helped him up. Her heart was very complicated. Originally, she didn't expect to find a good person in this life, but suddenly, an infatuated person appeared. The punishment for 2 people, your little life is gone. Do you want me to find another one after you die? The gardener was stunned. Then I'll help you bear part of it. It's fine as long as it doesn't take my life. In the future, let me take care of everything. Qing Shi, what do you say? Qing Shi looked at this face that could only be considered delicate and pretty. That serious expression with a bit of apprehension. She suddenly burst out laughing. When Li Hongyuan went to Luo family, he didn't hide from anyone and was very calm. He also didn't worry about people suspecting that he was roping in Luo Peishan. Thinking about it, Luo Peishan now had a tendency to develop into a solitary official. Just ask to support someone to the throne. Was it possible to just be a minister of the Ministry of Appointments? When Li Hongyuan entered Luo family's door, he was more leisurely and at ease than when he entered his own home. Those who didn't know would think that this was his home. Luo Peishan's nose and eyes weren't his nose and his nose. Jingwan was also a bit speechless. Wang Ye, you just came the night before, so you don't need to come so diligently. In the end, Li Hongyuan still gave Luo Peishan some face and didn't completely ignore him. He focused his attention on Jingwan and changed the topic to the tea leaves, indicating that he wanted to take a look. Luo Peishan's expression finally improved a little. Then he took it out with a bit of intention to show off. It was only a shallow box less than half the size of a palm. The tea inside looked pitifully small. Only this much. Course not. Luo Peishan said unhappily. Digression, the author is going out, and this is probably the only thing he has today. https://www. com/11/11807/6653209. HTML chapter error. Click here to report, no registration required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book. www.yanguiwo.com. Bikugo mobile reading website, Yanguiwo. Chapter 195. Li Hongyuan didn't say anything else. He watched as Luo Peishan personally brewed the tea. From time to time he would turn back and whisper to Jingwen. There was a bit of contentment and relaxation, not to mention the gentle smile on his face from beginning to end. Anyone could see that it was joy from the bottom of his heart. And perhaps Jingwen was affected by him. She also looked leisurely and contented. She was smiling and her eyes seemed to be shining. Between them, there seemed to be no place for a second person to come between them. When Luo Jinghua and Sun Yijia slowly walked over, they saw this kind of scene. The husband and wife couldn't help but stare blankly and look at each other. Could it be that Jin Qinhuang's rumored great favor is like this? Xiao Mei can have such an attitude towards him. It's no wonder that I heard that those women would want to die in the end. Luo Jinghua said rather emotionally. Sun Yijia looked at him speechlessly. What kind of expression was that to come up with such a damned conclusion? That was a prince, a Qinhuang. It wasn't like he couldn't get the previous woman, and it wasn't like he wanted to get the other party's heart. Would he lower himself to deliberately cater to the other party? Dream on. This clearly showed that he was treating Wan Mimi like this. And to be able to create a world that only belonged to the two of them and not let Wan Mimi notice. Jin Qinhuang really didn't have ordinary good intentions. Sun Yijia felt that for the time being, she should be able to rest assured about Wan Mimi's future days. Then she looked at the one beside her. Regarding the feelings between men and women, her husband was actually a blockhead. However, Sun Yijia wouldn't complain that he didn't know how to be romantic. As the saying goes, no one is perfect. It was better and more realistic to have a flaw. She couldn't be more satisfied with this husband. The arrival of the two people naturally broke the atmosphere between Jingwen and Li Hongyuan. Luo Jinghua always felt that his future brother-in-law's gaze was a bit cold, but Sun Yijia directly ignored it. It was still too early for him to get divorced, but he was already seducing his sister-in-law in front of them. Did he really think that they were blind? How could he not take her family seriously? Even if he was a noble, he couldn't do it. Luo Peishan was quite happy about their appearance. As for why, he himself could not explain it clearly. He felt that the atmosphere just now was too strange. He even felt that his presence as an old man was unnecessary. If he continued to stay, he would be struck by lightning. Now that there were two more people, that feeling disappeared, so she could focus on making tea again. Being disturbed, Li Hongyuan was not very angry. He said a few words to Luo Peishan and said a few words about his tea art. It was obviously a very ordinary meaning, but when it came from Li Hongyuan's mouth, it seemed to be very pleasant to hear. Didn't you see that he was a little strange before? Now he was happy and happy. Jingwen looked at Li Hongyuan in surprise. She knew a little bit about Li Hongyuan's temperament. He was someone who didn't even hold back when he talked back to Luqing Emperor. Unexpectedly, he was able to say something like a compliment. Li Hongyuan raised his eyebrows and smiled at her. Under normal circumstances, if he really wanted to please someone, there was basically no one he couldn't get. Jingwen couldn't help but laugh. Alright, someone was doing this because of her. She was grateful for that. If a married woman's mother's family and her husband's family were not on good terms, she would definitely be very uncomfortable if she was caught in the middle. For example, her sister-in-law Sun Yijia. In fact, she was not bad. After all, her family did not embarrass her. If they were angry with her because of her mother's relationship with her, or even hated her, then her life would be very difficult. So, Jingwen said thank you to him with her lips. Li Hongyuan smiled, but with a little bad intention. It was impossible to send him away with a thank you. Jingwen secretly rolled her eyes in her heart. It was too tasteless to ask her for a reward like this. It didn't matter whether he was tasteless or not. It was more important to get benefits. After drinking a new kind of wild tea, the taste was mellow. After tasting it carefully, it was a little bitter, but then it became sweet. It lasted for a long time. It was really good. However, because Sun Yijia was pregnant, it was a pity that she couldn't taste it. When she could drink it, the tea leaves were so little that the residue couldn't be seen. "Grandfather, why don't you give the child a name?" Jingwan said. "This tea was picked by Prince. It's more appropriate for Prince to name it." "Yunwan," Li Hongyuan blurted out. The others were still thinking about what it meant. Sounded strange. Jingwan couldn't help blushing. She glared at Li Hongyuan. "Prince, what nonsense are you talking about?" Well, there was no need to ask. They already knew what it meant, but they pretended not to understand. Li Hongyuan laughed unscrupulously. "Otherwise Yuanwan is fine too." "Your Highness," putting her name before his meant that he was prepared to let the rumors and slanders drown her. No, it probably wouldn't be just rumors. Those who were similar to the moralists would also come out to attack her and criticize her until she was black and blue. Even the emperor would reprimand her. "All right, pretend I didn't say anything." So he let it go. However, he didn't mention naming the tea leaves again. Before he finished his cup of tea, Madame Luo brought some people to bring over a lot of tea and snacks. Li Hongyuan didn't eat much before he came out. Now that he was hungry and had an appetite, he ate a lot. "Prince, did you not eat lunch?" Under normal circumstances, no one would eat snacks as food. After all, these things were very common at their level, not to mention the things used by Li Hongyuan, who was better off than his father. "I don't have an appetite, so I didn't eat much." Li Hongyuan glanced at Jingwan. He had personally experienced the so-called feast for the eyes. Probably because his gaze was too obvious, Jingwan unconsciously blushed and looked away. If so, this subject's wife will ask the kitchen to prepare some food for Prince. Madame Luo suggested calmly. "Just make a bowl of vegetarian noodles." Li Hongyuan didn't refuse. "Please wait a moment, Prince." Madame Luo turned around and ordered. The servant left in a hurry. "We have a cook who is very good at cooking noodles. He brought it over from Qian Prefecture." Jingwan smiled. "Oh, then this prince will have to taste it." Jingwan nodded. "Prince might like it. You'll know after you try it." It wasn't made by his wife. Of course, Li Hongyuan wouldn't say, "It must be delicious," without tasting it. "Girl, you need to practice your culinary skills properly," old Madame Luo said meaningfully from the side. Jingwan looked at her grandmother speechlessly. How could she expose her shortcomings like this? Besides, her culinary skills were not good, and it was all because of her grandmother's indulgence. She said that a lady from a respectable family did not need to learn these things. Regardless of whether it was before or after marriage, there would always be a chef. She only needed to know how to make some dishes. When the time came for her to cook at her husband's house, she could just watch from the side and say a few words. That would be considered as cooking personally. But now she said that she needed to practice properly. Jingwan probably only felt a little embarrassed that her shortcomings were exposed, but Li Hongyuan understood that these words were actually meant for him. There are 10 to 20 chefs in the prince's estate who are good at everything. If not, you can go to the palace and ask Imperial Father for a chef. There's no need for Princess to cook personally. Jingwan is so delicate and delicate. The kitchen is messy. What if she gets hurt? So, Madame Luo doesn't need to ask too much of Jingwan when it comes to cooking. It's the same for female workers. It'll hurt your eyes and hands. Then, Prince, please bear with it in the future. Madame Luo said with a satisfied expression. Even the dullest person would know what Madame Luo meant by exposing her shortcomings. Besides, Jingwan was never a dullard. She was clearly telling Li Hongyuan that if he wanted her to cook, he shouldn't even think about it. Fortunately, a certain someone was tactful. If he had said something unpleasant, it would have been awkward. However, this kind of thing could be said in private. How could he say it in front of her? Speaking of which, it seemed that no daughter of a family would personally entertain her fiancé. So they were all in the privileged class. If he wanted to see her, her family naturally wouldn't dare to stop him. People who didn't play by the rules were really annoying. But they didn't know that this matter was actually mutual love, and not someone's coercion. I'll go see if the noodles are ready. Jingwan stood up a little anxiously. She didn't wait for them to respond and directly left, unruly. However, she was the apple of everyone's eye, so no one cared about her. Seeing Jingwan leave, Sun Yijia also stood up and excused herself. Originally, she only came out to greet Jingwan, but because of Jingwan's presence, she stayed a little longer. However, not long after the two of them left, a servant came to say that Prince Rui had sent someone over. Should they see him? The masters of the Luo family all looked at Li Hongyuan. Logically speaking, this was the Luo family's matter, so it wasn't Li Hongyuan's place to interfere. However, that person had a subtle relationship with this person. The Luo family was also tired of Prince Rui. In fact, they wanted to use this overlord's hand to reject him. Call him in. This prince will take care of everything. The person who took away his beautiful cabbage. Naturally, he didn't have a good expression. However, this person was really good at doing things. Prince Rui sent a mama. Without a doubt, it should be related to the inner compound. This mama wasn't someone else. She happened to be the one who received Luo Jingying from the Luo family last time, the one who was highly regarded by Li Hongming. Lu Mama probably didn't expect that Prince Jean would also be here and hurriedly paid her respects. Facing other people, even if it was noble consort Su, she could still calmly deal with them. However, facing Li Hongyuan, she was a little fearful and could only strive to be calm. What did Li Hongming ask you to come to the Luo family for? Li Hongyuan directly called his elder brother by his name. It could be seen that he wasn't the least bit polite. Replying to Wang Ye, Master let this servant come to report the good news. Luo family's Shiqing is pregnant. Shiqing. Li Hongyuan was silent for a moment. Ben Wang remembered correctly. It should be 1 month, and she's already pregnant. Why else would it be said that Shiqing is a blessed one? Although it's still early in the pregnancy, it's not far from 10. At that time, Jingwan and the others suspected that Luo Jingying was pregnant on the first time. Everyone else was the same. Therefore, everyone knew what was going on. It's just that Li Hongming was too impatient. Even if he had to wait for another 10 days to half a month. Digression. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6653210. HTML chapter error. Click here to report, no registration required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book. www.bicken.com mobile version reading website, Bicken. You're tuning in to the Whispers of Romance YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.